Welcome to our DRB work session, and we have our Reston planner with us this evening to discuss Town Center West, North, Northwest, North. Floor is yours.
All right, thanks for having me. After watching a few work sessions on Reston Town Center North, RA staff was trying to figure out how we could be helpful in helping the DRB review RTC North. RTC North. As you know, it's a complicated application, and there's been a lot of talk from the applicants about the comprehensive plan and referencing the grid of streets, the recreational area, the circulation in terms of tying into the other adjacent properties as noted in the comprehensive plan. So what we went ahead and did is put together kind of a little toolbox of highlighting those key concerns and key areas of DRB review, and then linking them to the direct text in the comprehensive plan to kind of help support the DRB in analyzing the project and providing feedback. I think I sent it out about a week and a half ago. I don't know if everyone's had a chance to review it. I thought we could just do a really quick overview and then allow you to ask any questions you might have about what I sent. Does that sound good? Or?
Perfect.
Okay. So first, the first page just pretty much highlights 5 key points. That's kind of made up of the concerns brought up by the DRB, and pretty much the 5 areas of, or the key areas of purview from the DRB. So one, that it's a development plan, regardless of how vague it is in the purview of the DRB, so you guys do have the authority over how that's laid out. Second has to do with circulation. Some of that information is contained in the Reston Master Plan, which is meant to be used as a guide, but it should be a guide to the DRB in your review. So what I did there is I pulled some specific text from the comprehensive plan that references the conceptual grid of streets as it's noted in there. So we thought that might be helpful to the DRB when discussing this when the applicants come back. In addition, we worked with our land use council on some of these items, and there was some suggestion of potentially reconfiguring that circulation pattern to be a roundabout. It just is a suggestion, and if you go to, Margaret, do you mind going down a few pages? I think it's page 3, or there it is, yeah. That was just kind of a conceptual diagram which expands the green, creates less traffic across the green, which interrupts the recreational play area. Of course, this doesn't address all of your concerns, especially about tree preservation, et cetera, but it might allow for more. So this was just kind of a sample idea for the DRB to mull over, and maybe it'll spark some other ideas in terms of reconfiguring the space. The next point mostly has to do with density, and that is about the residential to non-residential ratio and building mass. That's highlighted in the Reston Master Plan, but is also within the purview of the DRB. In terms of the number of residential units, our attorney felt that that probably was not within the DRB's purview. However, the density is, so that ratio is important. Height, which is included in the master plan on pages 168 through 173, which is, again, that first attachment. It talks about the tapering of the buildings, which I believe the DRB brought up in that last work session. So we wanted to just point out that specific text for you so you could reference that. Next, recreation or common area amenities. So we pulled that same attachment, includes information about the central green. Again, it's referenced as a conceptual central green, and how, maybe that information can be used by you guys. And the next piece, attachment 3, is a page from the comprehensive plan which talks about all the community serving amenities that RTCN is supposed to host, including that recreational space. So we thought that would be also helpful for you to reference. And lastly, I included some of the key text from the comprehensive plan about tree preservation and the importance of preserving the natural resources in new development. And that's included in the text for the TSAs, which includes RTCN. So as much as the urban portion is important, there is a lot of discussion in that text about the importance of natural features and how those should be maximized even through redevelopment. So I just pulled some of that relevant text for you. Yeah, and then I guess the last point would be that a lot of these items should and can be committed to by the applicants in their proffers. So we just wanted to highlight that point, although it's a very, of course, it's not a development plan for the exact buildings and where they're going to go and how they're going to work. There is an opportunity for commitment from the applicants, especially when it comes to things like preserving a certain amount of trees or dedicating a certain amount of recreational space. So, any questions, or did I skip anything? Or?
Just off the top, I think it's a good report, very, very well done. The one question I had, and this kept coming up in some of our other discussions, meetings, whatever, and Ken brought this up any number of times.
Sure.
If you number those things starting at the top left, 1, and then 2 on the right, then 3, 4, and 5, and 6, just so we all know what we're talking about. The top 1, 2, 3, 4. Number 4, I like your idea of the roundabout. In my mind, that's an improvement, but where number 4 is where all the forest is now.
Right.
Okay? And what Ken was raising the question of, and what I'm going to ask the question now too, everyone sort of says, well, everything to the east of that is already going to be developed and so on. So, okay, that's fine. But this is all going to be developed too. And it just occurred to me is if you took number 4 and made that the park, then you'd have all 9 blocks or whatever it would be all the way around it over a central park that's already heavily wooded. And you still have just as many square feet for developers to come in and chomp up and so on. It's just a question because it would then be a central park, but it's like this plan is kind of turning its back on the stuff that is what Harris Teeter and Best Buy and all that stuff is. But that's going to happen and get developed almost as densely as this chunk. So I don't know, it's just a thought that, you got all of us thinking a little bit with this roundabout in a larger green area, which I think is great. And then you could still do east-west roads going across and up and down as well, too. I don't know, it was just a thought, but I guess the question is, the sort of sporadic saving of trees that's going on here doesn't really comply or make any of us very happy. And you point that out a lot. I don't know, what can we do about it? That's what we're going to have to do. So.
Well, I think those are fair points to bring up to the applicants,
Yeah.
and now you have some additional backup to the importance of that.
Yeah.
This was meant to just kind of come up with an idea, but this is really, you guys have the purview over this, and yeah, I think those are very fair points, and I think that I agree that the natural tree cover could enhance the park area, yeah.
I have a question. I read your analysis comment on the plan, and you mentioned that it's mentioned that there is a memo of understanding perhaps about the minimum number of acres of open space. Is it open space or park?
I believe it's open space, and it could be distributed throughout the site. It doesn't have to be one concentrated space.
The question in this context is that something that we should be aware of, and how does it relate to the points you made of the things that are within the purview of the DRB? How that?
Yeah, that directly relates to it. They will have to follow through on that memorandum of understanding. So, that's something potentially we could just share with the DRB so you see what it says. But yeah, that absolutely applies to your review in terms of ensuring there's adequate recreational space.
In contrast, you also pointed out that the application has over 3,200 residential units in the application versus plan from the county saying we're about 2,400, 2,300, and the master plan says a minimum of 1,000. I'm understanding you to say that none of that number of residential units is within our purview.
Right, so the comprehensive plan does say, at least at 1,000 residential units. So that's kind of dictated by the plan.
Well, that's the minimum, right?
Right, and then, they are limited to, I think what you're referencing, there was an issue when we first reviewed the plan. They were anticipating an amendment to the PRC zoning ordinance. So they had two options where they were saying, well, if we can do more than 50 dwelling units per acre, we could go, all the way up to here. And we felt that that wasn't correct, seeing as the PRC ordinance had not been passed. So therefore, right now, they would be constrained to the 50 dwelling units per acre.
But if it were passed, they were talking about still 50 would be the limit? I thought the PRC amendment talked about greater than 50 in the TSA, not the PRC.
It's in the PRC, in a PRC property within the TSA would have had greater than 50. So there were specific areas highlighted in the comprehensive plan that would be allowed additional density.
Potentially that they're talking now about up to 75?
So right now, they're talking about 50.
I understand, but
Conceptually, they have removed those other numbers from their plan sets.
from the plan that's submitted. So
Mhm.
right now they're
Correct, yeah. So, at this point, I guess what I mean is that at this point, the DRB's purview over residential units probably it's not ready yet, because they're not talking about the actual buildings. They're pretty much just ensuring their development rights based on what they're entitled under the zoning code and the comprehensive plan. Does that make sense? When each building would come in, then you could talk about how many units and what's going where.
Or
Mhm.
I guess you can.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have any thoughts? Questions? I think the trick is going to be how do we implement this, and we'll just have to see how it goes, when they
Yeah.
come back in. I appreciate. Yes, sir.
I'll just add to that we're largely a reactive board. It's not like we get to sit down and design the new town center at RTC North. It's up to the county to come in and show us something that responds to our comments. You've done that. Now can they do that? It's not like we put forth design ideas. That's up to the county. And that's the way design review works in general. It's very difficult for us to sort of lead. We mostly just react. That's the way we're set up. So, but I would agree that, the grid is where this starts. It's pretty clear that it's supposed to be an extension of town center.
Mhm.
I think we, as residents, probably want it to be a little less urban in general, and certainly increasing the size of the green space, whether it's centrally located or something else, is key to that. And it'll just be curious to me to see if we get any serious movement when the county presents this next.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
And as I mentioned, this is just meant to be kind of a tool for for whatever they do come back with, when you review the plans. We thought it might be.
No, we appreciate it. It was
Helpful, yeah.
good stuff to have it
Mhm.
where you can sit and read
Yeah.
it. And
Is that going to be made available to the county before they come back?
I could make it available to the county if you'd like me to.
Be a bad idea.
Yeah.
And it can also be, this kind of lengthy, be put back into our packets for the meeting when they come back, but I think we've got it now, so just leave it in the Dropbox so we can all read it every night and have it memorized by the time that
Sounds great,
July.
yeah.
I think that's the chair's responsibility.
To read it every night.
We'll take turns reading it aloud to each other. So it's a good report, I think.
Okay, good.
Let's see what happens. Appreciate your efforts.
Could I ask one other question since we have
Sure.
10 minutes? There's one lot there between,
From west.
I guess it's to the west of Paramount, there on the corner of Old
Okay.
Dominion.
You go by my numbering
One-
system,
1,
1, 2,
2,
3,
8,
4,
1, 2.
5, 6, 7, 8.
1, 2, 3, it's the
1,
bottom.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Yes, but officially they're, yeah, okay, that's it. So it's south of 7 and 8.
Uh-huh.
directly south of the
The one that's white?
one that's not any, that, no, to the right of the one that you pointed to, that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm understanding that's not part of
It's
this.
not available at this time, apparently.
It's not part of the,
It's not part of the application, no. No.
What is that? Is that the,
think
that's
it's
next to the library?
I think it's vacant.
I think what the plan says is that they can't be redeveloped unless it's made in the context of two other lots, up 7 and 8.
Hmm.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Okay.
I assumed whoever owned it was just waiting for better
Waiting for,
bucks.
yeah, better offer.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, any
All
other
right.
questions?
Relevant to the people, the Paramount people are interested in that.
Oh, okay.
Any other questions, thoughts? Thank you very much then.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for putting it all together.
Sure.
You're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting.
Think
At
about
about 10,
it.
10:30, it'll,
You may be here a while. Okay, I guess we can turn our mics off for 10 minutes if you want. Okay, welcome to the June Design Review Board meeting. We'll call the meeting to order. I need a motion to approve this evening's agenda.
So moved. Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Need a motion to approve last month's minutes.
So moved. Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Is there any general members' comments? Okay, we'll get on with the agenda then. The first item on the agenda is Baldwin Grove Cluster. Someone here for there? You want us there, wherever you want to be?
Just one.
Okay.
My name is Sean Ensley. I'm the director and treasurer of Baldwin Grove, our managing agent, and our other board members who had their comments. So, about a year ago, we were asked to, as our bulbs for our street lights burn out, we would replace them. We've provided to Reston Association, we have 28 street lights. To date, we've replaced 13 of the 28. And we'll continue to do so. I would like to add, though, that one resident had claimed about, replacing 175s with 50s. We have had an email comment from another resident who objects to us doing that. So we're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place, but we will continue with the plan that you spoke to you about.
What were the issues?
Issue was you had asked us to, with respect to our street lights, the wattage
Right.
was the original and street lights from 1995-96 were 175 watts.
Right.
And as they burned out, we replaced them with 50 watts.
Right.
And you asked us to do that, and as they burn out, we replaced them.
Okay.
So today,
And you've done 13 out of 26. Okay.
28.
28. Okay.
So,
Yeah, hi, I'm an affected party, Elizabeth Aurelia, excuse me.
So we're following exactly what you
Okay.
concluded. So, and as I said, we have had another resident who objects to us replacing the 175s with the 50s, but we'll deal with that on our board meeting.
Okay. All right.
That's it.
Yeah, so I'm here to, I'm glad that I made it. I'm sorry I'm a little bit late. I'm actually here to speak on this issue. Something that's come to my attention in speaking before the covenants and the board here is that you don't always remember what preceded getting to the point where we are. Well, there's years of work on my part to address this lighting. There's years of work of my effort that brought this forward. And it took a tremendous amount of effort working with your processes that haven't always been perfect to get this implemented. When it was implemented 13 months ago, the directive from you, Mr. Newland, was that they were to replace the lights within 1 year. Your administrative staff did not document that accurately. Paige Bastian was here. We had the property manager here. I was here. You stated 1 year. I said that they could do it within 30 days. Paige Bastian falsely stated that we didn't have the funds to do it. That was a false statement. Funds have never been an issue at our property. The owners are overpaying, and they don't know what to do with the funds, which is why our trees are being torn down. Your administrative staff failed to document that these lights were all to be replaced with 50 watts. We didn't address the issue with reflectors. That's been overlooked. Their task was to replace them with 50 watts. They have not. They've got a mere fraction of the lights replaced. Money is not an issue. We have an opportunity here right now to correct the situation, and that is to give them 30 days to replace the remaining lights.
Okay. Not to, I have the original decision here, and it's very clear that we approved the site lighting of 27 lampposts with a 50-watt bulb, with the stipulation that they be installed uniformly throughout the cluster, the bulbs be replaced as they burn out. In the original approval, whatever, motion, whatever, there was nothing about it has to be done in a year, or there was no timeline. We asked them to come back in a year and give us an update, which they just did. As far as I'm concerned, this has gone back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. They've done exactly what we asked them to do.
Well,
We didn't give them 30 days. We didn't give them a year. We said as they burn out. period.
You gave them a year, it wasn't documented, unfortunately. That was an administrative error on the part of Reston Association.
No, I don't think so. I think we asked them to come back in a year and give us a report, which
You
they
gave
just
them 1
did.
year to, this is 3 years now since I bought the complaint for it. 3 years later, we don't have the lights replaced. These lights we have thousands and thousands of dollars in repairs on these lights. Thousands.
I'm not arguing with you about that.
Tens of thousands of dollars of repairs on lights. And they can't replace
But we're-
the
but-
lights to make them more livable out there. This motion
Okay,
hasn't done
okay.
anything to affect my quality of life out there.
Okay.
Your very words 13 months ago were that they had 12 months to do the replacement, because I was pushing for 30 days, which was completely doable by the money that was available to us.
Okay.
So we have a chance to correct that here.
Regardless of process, I think where we are is where we thought we were. We asked them to come back in a year and give us an update, which they did. I don't think we're going to reopen the whole thing this evening. That's not why they're here. That's not what's on the agenda. So I
No,
appreciate your concern.
I'm not asking you to reopen it, I'm asking you to enforce what you said a year ago, and it was incorrectly administered through your personnel.
Well, I don't want to pick on staff. I don't think that's the issue here. I think
How
what,
is that person, it's not picking on somebody, you guys need to, it wasn't recorded properly, and you didn't get, the notes weren't taken completely.
well, just out of curiosity, I guess everyone that's affected party gets a copy of this motion, right?
Right,
So
well, I
you
have a
got this-
full-time job outside of here, and as I know you do,
No,
but
no,
this
hold
is
on,
their
hold on,
full-time
hold on.
job.
You keep interrupting this. So you got this a year ago. So it's a little late to come back now and say staff blew it.
Well,
Okay.
I brought it up with Anna and other members.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your concern. Anyone else have any thoughts or questions about what's going on?
This isn't going nowhere, they're gonna continue to, they're not doing anything about it.
Hopefully they'll do what the memo says. They're going to, as they burn out,
Right,
replace
well,
them.
you think you don't, yeah, you don't know who we're dealing with.
Anyone have thoughts, questions? No? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Let's see. Waterside Apartments is the next one. Anyone there? We are. Come on up, introduce yourself.
My name is Steve Carmen. I'm with Chesapeake Realty Partners. We're the owners of the Waterside Apartments. This is Hank Fox and Alan Bacon with CPJ, our engineers for the site.
All right, I guess you're taking down an old building and putting up a new one, and we've got
Yeah.
lots of drawings here, so you want to walk us through what you got real quick?
Okay, can we go to page 1, if you don't mind? I think there was a picture of the existing pool house. The existing pool bathhouse is just simply an old block and brick veneer.
Yep.
Been painted over the years. It's built in probably '87. I think I believe there was should be a photograph. Hmm? There you go. There, that's it right there. That's it. That is pretty simple. It's very small in the interior. I think there's 2 showers, 2 toilets, 1 urinal in the men's room, 2 or 3 toilets in the ladies' room, 1 shower, 2 showers. There are no windows. It's just vented. It's just no air conditioning, no heat. So it's pretty simple little building. So what we want to do is take that down and combine a new bathhouse, updated bathhouse at our leasing office to the building and a fitness area. So there are no amenities there of that sort yet, of that type. So we want to add the fitness area to the building. There's a little room in the back that the community residents can use, a little screen porch. So it'll have a little bit more use for the whole community. It's the exterior of the building, the new building. We plan to match all the colors of the existing apartment buildings in the community. And really, this building can't even be seen from the road. It's way down inside the community. So from the adjacent apartment buildings and, of course, the pool area, it's actually visible to our residents here. So we really need some updating there. So, like I said, the old building's outshot. So.
Okay. So anyone, that's your presentation? We've all looked at your drawings, I guess.
So far, yeah. Do you have anything to add? No. As far as sediment control though and all, it's pretty simple. We're tying into some existing storm drains.
Is your architect here?
He couldn't make it. He's actually taken Illinois. They're out of
We
Philly.
we live for architect speak.
I was hoping he would be here, trust me, yeah.
One
But,
of you guys want to try? A little architect speak?
Go ahead. Try it.
Let's start. Anyone have any questions, Grace? Any questions or thoughts?
Lighting in the building?
Outside the building,
That's, yes,
we'll have all LED.
okay.
We do a lot of building. We're developers up in Baltimore. We
Yeah.
do a lot of stuff, and we're very green. All LED, all energy saving. So it'll be well insulated, all LED lighting. So it's important to us. Again, get back to the structure. It'll be simple. It's on slab, just one story.
I think what Grace is asking, are there outside lights, and
Yeah.
if so, where?
There are just a couple of outside lights at the entrance, yes, of course. Each entrance will be lit, and on the back, on the pool side, we'll have a handful of lights, fixtures on the back, but it's just going to be minimal. We expect, actually, in the specs, there's a couple lights that we spec'd. But it's just, the pool closes at 7, so there's really.
So lights go out at 7?
Lights are out at 7, so
Okay.
we actually lit the entrances on the front, and of course, we'll have entrances lit on the back for emergency exit and stuff like that.
Okay. good.
Thank you.
Charlie?
Well, no, I was saying, I noticed in the sign-offs by your residents that none of them seem to have any, did you get good coverage showing the design to the residents? Because some are fairly close.
We actually posted it in the leasing office as well. So, and we put that out when we first announced it to all the residents, that it would also be available there too.
I did notice that, whatever it was, 1220, whatever, the first one there signed off without any negative comments. And I was just curious, you had that pretty much throughout?
Yeah, well, actually, we bought it a year ago, the property. I know they all requested some amenities. They loved the idea of the fitness area,
Oh, yeah.
because there's nothing there now, like I said. So, and add the new pool house, it's a real plus for the community, the bathhouse.
Bruce?
It's a larger footprint, I understand.
Yeah.
And just a simple question, was there any tree removal as part of this to get it to fit?
Yeah,
The area that is going to be built in is actually surrounded by 2 easements on 2 sides. So we kept the footprint pretty small, so we didn't have to interrupt any easements because there's a phone, cable, and power. Storm drain easement on the one side. So we kept it smaller. Like I said, it's only 3,655 square feet. But we do have some trees to replace, definitely. But there's a handful of them out in the front that we'll take down and replace. Yeah.
Replace them.
Neil?
Just trying to understand the emergency access.
Mm-hmm.
You have the wide walkway there currently, you have a smaller walkway now. Is that just open space, or are you doing some sort of grass paver?
It's going to be a grass paver and concrete combined.
So-
We're going to have emergency egress there for emergency vehicle. So we get an ambulance or whatever we need down there. It's a wide gate to be able to get a vehicle of that size in.
It seemed to me the walkways could overlap the emergency access better. Where you're coming in from the parking lot, there's an existing ramp, but then the ramp doesn't connect to where the walkways are. It just seems a little.
It's also, we're trying to meet ADA, so that's not tight right there. Do that. It's very steep as you come off the parking lot there and go down into the site. So it's steeper than otherwise without having to provide rails. And
I don't think the steepness is what the issue is. I think it's the alignment of the emergency.
For ADA, though. So that walkway, the walkway that overlaps the grass street is an ADA walkway. So we're having to, we do have it covering some of the grass creek, but not all of the grass creek.
I had a hard time following it in the drawings, that's all. I'll leave the comment at that.
Nick?
Yeah, I'd echo what Neil just said there, that this looks like a really nice building, a nice addition there, but that front entrance where you've got this kind of concrete plaza, then you go into the 6-foot walk and then kind of spider off it seems a little weird for how nice this building's going to be. I understand the ADA grading concerns are going to be tough to meet there. I'd encourage you to maybe study something different for that. Could you incorporate a nice plaza area with some bench seating up front there as an amenity? It just might have a nice impact on that front spot. But other than that, I think it's a nice proposal. I appreciate the materials you guys submitted for review for the conceptual stage here.
Okay. The only question I had was, is there any signage that we need to be aware of?
Well, it's just going to be a leasing office signing. There's existing sign provided a photograph. It should be in the that package right there. That's just going to be moved and relocated right there. There's no signage in front of the pool house now. We're just trying to keep it pretty simple.
So the existing sign is going to be reused?
Just going to be reused right there, yeah. Just to show that leasing is in that building.
Okay, I didn't have any other, I think it's a nice looking building.
Yeah.
It's going to be a nice facility. Anybody have any other questions or thoughts? We'll entertain a motion if someone has one. Or not, you can just go home. Thanks for coming.
Well, I move we accept the proposal as submitted with our normal tree removals must be replaced, and any additional signage should be brought forward to be approved prior to installation.
Okay, there's a motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second, any further discussion?
I'd still like to see something done with the walkways in front that cleans it up a little more, per Nick's comments. Can we incorporate that in the motion and ask an alternative to be submitted to staff for review? No, this is a final.
Concept.
It's in concept.
Concept, I think.
What's in concept? Looks like a finished building to me.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
I don't have a problem
I've
with it
got
being
health
final.
department approval already, so.
I think if we want to add to the motion, a restudy of the entrance and the ramp to be submitted to staff for their perusal and approval. Is that okay with you?
Yes.
You're the motion maker?
And signage and.
Well,
Additional
there shouldn't be any, only if you're doing some additional signage. If you're just relocating, you know.
Any additional signing has to have a new application and a new submission. Okay. So that, Grace, okay with you if we add that?
I'm fine.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, good. That's the final approval.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Good presentation.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Hunter Woods Burger King.
Good afternoon.
You identify yourself, please.
My name is Mike Pisa. I'm with Alliance Signs of Virginia. We're doing the sign installation on the Burger King over in Woods Plaza.
Okay. Take it away.
In the last meeting, unfortunately, they had forgotten the signage. We got approvals on the drive-through, the clearance bar. We removed the merchandising signs and that the lighting on the outside for the light band would be unlit. So we've made those changes. The signage that we're discussing today are the actual building signs that were not brought up in the last meeting. We're looking at, it's basically buildings existing, just doing a redesign. They've changed their imaging. We're looking at putting one 6-foot logo on the southeast elevation, one 5-foot on the northwest, a 4-foot on the southwest, which is another round logo, and then a set of channel letters that say Burger King on the northeast side, and then a set of channel letters reading Flame Grilling on the southeast facade, which is a total of right at 112 square feet.
of what we asked you last time.
So just, can I read that back to you again? There's the round logo on the southwest elevation. There's the round logo on the northwest elevation.
Correct.
There are the channel letters on the northeast elevation.
Correct.
And there's the round logo on the southeast elevation.
Yes, sir.
And that's all you're here for?
There's also one set on the southeast that's reading flame grilling.
Oh, yeah, on the canopy.
That's doubled up, yeah, on the canopy, correct.
Everybody's clear that it's just those signs that we're discussing this evening?
So where the elevations call out the new light band at the top,
The light band will be unlit.
that's a philosophical question. Is a light band still a light band? If
Yeah, I guess not.
It'll be a color band.
It's all in perception, I guess.
It's a band.
The band.
the unlight band.
There you go. Okay, I think it's pretty straightforward. Anyone have any questions generally? Start, Charlie.
Well, I thought we had discussed not having a round sign on the northwest elevation because it's not really visible from street level on Colts Neck. It's only visible for the townhouses or complex across the street. And I question that that's a good, a necessary source of light shining across those people.
Okay. Grace, any comments?
I don't have any further comments.
Okay. Neil?
No further comments.
I don't see anything in the approval letter that says anything about that, but I remember that.
We talked about maybe it just didn't make the.
Yeah, well, okay. Bruce?
No, but I want to clarify, we're not restricted to what we discussed there if there's something that comes up, like a suggestion. is it?
Correct. Nick?
I have nothing to add.
I guess the only thing I would add is I do think the lit round sign over the drive-in window is kind of overkill because you have a lot of lights coming all down the side of that building. And since you lit or have signs on both ends, that's what people see from Coles Neck. And you're facing the parking lot with more signs. So, and with everything else, I don't think that sign's necessary. It's just kind of,
Which is the same sign that he's addressing as well.
Correct.
The same sign he's addressing.
yeah, the one that's
Yes.
above the drive-in window,
Right.
drive-through window, whatever. So that's the only one I would take issue with. But given that, pardon me, I would make a motion that we approve the sign package as presented with the one stipulation that the round sign above the drive-through window be eliminated.
Be eliminated.
Is there a second for that motion?
I'll second that.
The motion is second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to take about a 20-minute break. Snacks will be provided.
By the applicant.
By the applicant, right? Yeah, I like that. South Lakes Village Center.
How are y'all doing so far?
We're good. We're good. Okay, we have, just so everyone understands, we have a list of affected parties. So we're going to go through the presentation, and then if we have affected parties that want to say something, you're welcome to speak, but you have to be signed up as an affected party. And if someone already says what you think you're going to say, it's okay to say, I agree, okay? So we have a lot of people here tonight, so. Anyway, the applicant, the floor is yours.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the DRB. Thanks for having us tonight. My name is John Coppola with Kinley Horn. Our address is 11400 Commerce Park Drive, Suite 400, Reston, Virginia 20191.
I'm Stephanie Smar. I'm Vice President of Asset Management for the Chevy Chase Land Company.
And I'm Michael Casey, also with Kimley Horn in Reston, Virginia.
Good. Welcome.
Thank you very much. So as a reminder, we were here a couple months ago for the full DRB meeting, and as a result of that meeting, we had a follow-up work session where a few of you were at, and we had some additional discussions and some tweaked some of the design a little bit, and we feel like we've worked hard with the DRB and with the various clusters and building a good compromise situation for everyone. So hopefully we'll all agree at the end of this. So I'll sort of walk everyone through the drawings again, but stop me if we're going into too much detail for you.
Stop.
Can we take a vote? So if you look at this picture, I always think it's useful to see the aerial that shows the existing conditions. This is an old center. Hasn't been improved in a long time, and so Chevy Chase Land Company has made it a point to improve the center overall and the plaza in general. And so Stephanie's going to just say a couple quick words about Chevy Chase, and then I'll continue with the presentation.
So Chevy Chase Land Company is a company that's been around for over 125 years.
You don't look that old.
Thank you. We have owned property in Reston for over 30 years. We are long-term holders of properties. We are not in it for a quick flip. We have properties that we have owned for literally over 100 years. We are committed to providing stable neighborhood centers. It's what we bought South Lake Center for, because it was a stabilized, neighborhood-centric shopping center with multiple modes of transportation that allowed people to come. We want to continue that. We want to protect that through the future for any changes in retail, for anything else. We want this to continue to be a neighborhood center. I live in Northern Virginia myself. I live 15 minutes from here. It's an area that I'm at a lot. I see a lot. We have board members that live on the lake. We are here, we're committed to this property, and we're just trying to preserve it for the future as a neighborhood center.
Thank you.
So what we're working on is really the plaza, repairing the plaza and fixing it up. That's what our goal is here. If you look at the very first sheet, the very first slide, just want to point something out real quick. There are a few trees that we're getting rid of, two of which are dead, which is why we're getting rid of them, and a couple of the other ones we're getting rid of because we need to make the right space. So you can see the trees in pink are the ones that we're removing. Tree 4 and 7 are the dead trees. So you can continue. So you can see the sort of existing conditions. I know many of you have been to the center before and are very familiar with it, as am I, and have lunch there quite frequently. So I'm anxious to get it fixed up myself. So there's a bunch of different pictures. You can see that obviously things need to be repaired and fixed, which is the goal here. So you can sort of flip through. I'm sure you've all looked at them. If you look at the plaza design on that page, just to walk you through the or sort of main concepts here. If you look at the top, right here, at the top of this plaza, currently it's a concrete wall and it really prevents people from sort of walking down to the water and feeling like it's welcome. So at that spot and then down below by the water, the goal is to add wood steps to provide a place for people to interact, also to open it up, make it feel much more welcoming for folks to walk down and spend some time and sit down and talk and then eventually make it down to the waterfront and enjoy the water. So those two areas in particular we felt were barriers to it feeling welcome and to being a place where folks could easily get to. If you've been there, it sort of feels awkward and it's hard to sort of get down there. So those are two of the main points of this. We also added some additional seating areas and some planters up at the top, right at the base of the first steps. We added a seating area, sort of like a cafe area in the middle there. Then down by the lower steps, there's a turf area for kids and such to play, with some additional seating and then some minimal seating down by the water. So that's sort of the overall design. There's also some bike racks and a bike fix station over to the right. That's sort of the main design. Then if you flip to the other pages, you can see the different materials we're looking at using. You can see the cross sections that show you what it sort of looks like. I know you've all probably already looked through those, so spent time on them. If you get to the landscape plan, right there, we had, during the work session, we talked a lot about the trees and adding some additional shade, that type of thing. And so we tweaked our design a little bit. And at that meeting, that was when we noted that the one of the trees was dead, and that's the tree over on the left-hand side by Red's table. And then we changed the two trees down at the bottom from red buds to river birch, with the intent of providing a tree that gets bigger and provides more shade.
Is that a single trunk or multiple trunk?
Probably be a multi-trunk.
So that was one of the main changes. Michael, is there any other significant changes we made to this plan?
Yeah, that was the big one, planting.
It seemed like most folks liked it overall last time, so we didn't make any wholesale changes, but tried to respond to your comments.
I think that at the workshop, the biggest thing came out, the thing you all responded to primarily was some of our objections and some of the affected parties' objections where it was becoming sort of a recreation center with the ping pong tables and the cornhole game and things like that. But what we finally decided at the workshop was this is basically a landscape plan.
Right.
And which makes it much less offensive to anybody. You're planting trees and changing stuff around. So I just want to point that out. That was one of the results of the workshop, was it was way, way simplified, and the applicant had really listened to what we had to say last month or the month before, I forget.
Right, thank you.
So that said, let's see if we have any other comments up here. Grace?
I don't have any other comments. I just appreciate the effort that you put into reducing the number of programmed activities that you had initially on the initial plan that was submitted during the first DRB meeting. So I like what I'm seeing now. Thank you.
Cool, thank you.
Okay. Charlie?
I was just curious, did we keep the chalk wall?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That was pretty inoffensive.
Hopefully.
No, I think it's a great plan, and since I live there, I'm glad to see it get upgraded.
Thank you.
Bruce? Nothing. Neil?
I'm just wondering where the orange Adirondack-ish chair is used versus the other furnishings. Where's the metal bench that has the South Lakes kind of etched out back also? Where is that?
The Adirondack chairs are located near the waterfront area, kind of on that lower tier.
Got it. So then the more loungy stuff up in the mid-cafe area and the metal bench is where?
I don't see it on this particular part of the plan. It was intended to be a furnishing element that would be used throughout the center in the future.
It's a nice looking addition.
I think there's one down, if you look on the right-hand side, down by the water.
Trash can looks good too. I like the trash can.
Yeah.
How often do I get to say that?
Not often.
More trash cans.
Yeah.
Get the shopping bag.
Nick?
Yeah, I want to apologize for missing the work session. Had a conflict, but I like this new improved plan. I think the addition of the river birch up front is kind of what we were looking for there, to get a little bit more shade element, a little more height there in lieu of the red buds that had been previously there. So I think that change is great. And also kind of, I think what Grayson mentioned, some of the programming changes I think are a good solution for the space. So look out.
Thank you, Nick. Neil, there are 3 benches down by the waterfront. If you on the main plan.
Yeah, we're going to get to the affected parties. Just hold on a second. The only other comment I had, we asked you to show us a turf sample because there was some concern about what that actually looked like. Neil wasn't particularly curious about that. Do you happen to have that hidden, or just want to cut up a piece of the rug?
Curious.
Yes, I apologize. We did not bring a sample of the turf.
It's going to hold things up.
We do have a picture of it, if that helps.
Okay, all right.
Is it going to be a longer blade artificial turf, not a cheap AstroTurf?
Right, that's the plan.
Page 2 of the materials. Couple pages backwards.
There was a close-up of it.
There was a close-up that showed it.
There was a close-up.
All the way up there.
So, that's it right there.
Okay.
Yeah, it is a
It's like
longer
real
blade,
grass.
If you mowed your yard at least.
Okay, that's the comments from here. We have a list of affected parties, and we'll go through the list. Lakeport Cluster, Mary Sapp. Is she here to say anything? Okay. Gil Blanketspor. Blankspor? Okay. Cafe Sano? Okay. It's going very well. Larry Dentler? You're here. Okay. Chuck Foster? Nope. Sandy Laser? Okay. Evans Ranch? Wayne Young? Diane Zukas? That's it. Sir, if you had something you wanted to say, please step up to the microphone over there.
Yeah, I'm not one of the affected parties, but I live in Ballard's Landing cluster, which is within walking distance of this plant. The question I have is, the trees that are going to be planted, are they of sufficient height to cast some shade? Because that area can get pretty hot in the high summer.
Yeah, that was one of the questions we had before, is why they've changed to a different tree. But after my understanding, and we can refer to our landscape architect here, that if you put large trees in, their chance of survival's not good. It's better to put a medium-sized tree in, 3 or 4 inch caliper, I guess is what we're talking about, that they'll grow quicker and do better in the long run. So I can't remember what you said on your list here, but I think they were 8 to 10 feet high to start with or something.
Right, that's about right.
8 to 10 feet. And they're double or triple trunk, so they'll.
Right, for the river birch.
Yeah. We have to let them grow. I mean, we had the same concern too. That's when the larger trees, which died, but you really do need shade there. I mean, we're helped a little bit by the parking lot is to the east. So in the morning, you're going to get sun in there, but then as it moves around, it's going to be shaded pretty much by Red's table. So, but it is hot. We all understand that. So hopefully in 5 years, it'll look like a small forest. Any other comments from the board?
Good.
Is there a motion?
I move we approve the application as presented tonight.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Good. Well done.
Thank you very much.
Looking forward to it. When are you going to start?
Yes, we all are.
Now, when are you going to start?
As soon as we can.
Okay.
We still got to work out some things with Trevor.
Cool. Oh, the sign, I guess, sorry,
The shopping bags.
too late.
We approved the signs.
I think we approved the sign, it was in the
Yeah, it was
packet.
in the packet.
Yeah, we did approve it, never mind, thank you very much.
We like them.
We did. We kept the shopping bag, which I
Yeah.
thought was particularly good.
It's on record.
Okay,
At least it's.
Lake Ann Fellowship. Hello again.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the opportunity to be here again this evening. I'm Lynn Strobel with Walsh Colucci. I'm going to turn it over to Suzanne Welch just for a brief introduction, then we'll go through our presentation. I think you all are familiar with this, so we'll try to keep it brief. Thank you.
Again, I'm Suzanne Welch. I'm with Community Preservation Development Corporation. We are co-developers with the current owner, Fellowship Square Foundation, and we have Eddie Byrne here also from Fellowship Square, and as you can see, we have quite a number of the residents of Fellowship Square who are taking an interest in this project. Give me 1 minute to frame this for you on where we are. We spent 2 years getting HUD approvals to preserve the 240 units as affordable senior housing. It was no easy feat through an election to get a discretionary approval out of HUD to issue new vouchers for all of the residents, and we've got that approval. There's only one way to renovate, to replace the affordable housing, and that's to build on the site. I think we've maybe beaten that one to death in trying to explain it. I just wanted to repeat it here. We have, though the comprehensive plan allows building 425 units, we are only building 300. 240 units, which are the senior, and we're down to from 76 to 60 units of the home ownership. And we think home ownership is a great solution for the balance of the site. And the proceeds of the sale for the home ownership development will be invested directly into preserving the affordable senior housing. Lastly, I just want to say we are here for conceptual plan approval. We've had some very good work sessions. We've had good collaborative discussions with our neighbors and with the residents, the many residents that are here. And we are here for conceptual site plan approval. We also need to know that we're going in the right direction for the senior building and its architectural design, because we have to completely pay for the redesign of it. And that's, we will do that, but we want to just do that once. So we want to know if we're headed in the right direction on that, because we've completely flipped the building. So from now, I'll turn it back over to Lynn.
Great. Thank you, Suzanne. And Margot, if we could go to actually, I think we've been through that slide, so let's go to the next slide. And again, I think you are familiar now with this project, but just to refresh your memory, this is not an undeveloped site. It's not vacant. It currently houses the existing fellowship buildings. There are 2 of them. They were built in the 70s, and they are desperately in need of replacement. The buildings themselves are actually a little bit taller than the ones that we're proposing. And if we go to the next slide. And the site has some constraints to it. You may recall that there are easements located on the property. There's also a dedication for the future realignment of Village Drive. If we go to the next slide. And then perhaps our greatest challenge is the fact that, as we've discussed, we only want residents to move once. And so as a result, we are preserving that existing building and building the new building to allow for one move. It's just not economically viable or feasible to have residents move off-site for a 2-year period and then come back. So that really limits where we can put this building. We can go to the next slide. So this may look somewhat familiar. This is the first plan that we presented to you all. I'll just say that we started with 72 over 2s and a building that looked quite different for the seniors. Next slide. And we worked on that and came to you with a work session. And we were able to make a lot of modifications to this site. We listened to the comments that you gave us at that work session, and we brought all those together, and we have another plan, the next slide, that we'll share with you this evening. And this is a little bit more refined than what we presented at the work session. In a moment, I'm going to turn it over to our architect to go over this in a little bit more detail, but I just would like to hit some of the highlights of the changes that have been made. And I'll start with that senior building. You can see that that design has completely changed. It's been reoriented. It is further back from North Shore Drive. We have greater setbacks really all the way around. We have a terrace now out front that's going to hopefully provide some interaction with Lake Ann Village Plaza. And we have modified that frontage along North Shore, hopefully to make it more appealing, as was discussed. Kind of moving in a westerly direction, what you'll notice is that we have modified the open space and the drop-off area. We have been able to achieve a bus drop-off on site. We have added a lot of landscaping, and we've made that open space area, and there's several of them on the site. We've made those more passive because I think that was the direction that we were given. With these changes, we've been able to increase tree preservation and also increase setbacks around the entire perimeter of the property. As we continue to go to the west, you'll see a revised layout for those 2-over-2 market units. We've made some changes at your suggestion in that these units no longer face North Shore Drive. I think that was a big change that we made. We've tried to make as big a setback to North Shore as we could. As we described the last time, we have some constraints through the fire marshal, but we've tried to provide the best setback that we can and really provided a lot of landscaping. I will also note that we have provided parking that is more accessible to the units, if you will, kind of spread out, and of course, as I mentioned before, increasing the buffers at the perimeter of the property, especially to Hickory Cluster and to Barron Cameron Avenue. As a result of these changes, we've also lowered retaining walls. I do want to point out, at our work session, we talked about the retaining wall that's along North Shore in front of the senior building. That has come down considerably, and as we go through this, we can talk about that more specifically, but we have brought that down and provided more landscaping in that area. So that's just the highlights, and I'm going to turn it over to Logan to talk about the building architecture. And I'll just reiterate what Suzanne had mentioned, is that we're really hoping for a conceptual. We have a separate package that we submitted of the materials that we're hoping to be approved conceptually so that we can continue on in this process. So Logan, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. My name's Logan Schutz with Grimm & Parker Architects. I'll try to avoid any architect speak. But can we go to the next slide, please? So you can see on the left is where we were, 3 wings with the curving piece that faced Lakeshore. And what we've done is we've taken the middle wing out, we flipped the building around, pushed the wing back, and created a terrace, plaza, which is above the parking on now the south side. The one wing on the west comes out a little bit. That helps us shade the terrace from the sun. The main entry is about in the same place. Loading had to pull around. We still go down a ramp into the garage below the building. The building comes out of the ground on one side and buried on the other for the garage. We reduced the building by 1 story in height. Move to the next slide. Okay, this was the elevation you had seen before, and again, we're looking just for direction, so move to the next slide. And you can see now less presence on North Shore, and we're able to get some more trees in. We have a little more room now that the building's back a little bit further. The garage is completely screened, so there's no way to see into the garage. And as we develop, we'll get into the more of the architecture. Next slide. This is just up a little bit so you can see into the plaza area, and you can see the added trees. Next slide. This is just from a straight-on elevation from the traffic circle once you arrive up on top, and we have a large seating area, for the seniors porch area in the front there on the right, excuse me. And we'll go into the architecture later on, but we've got Juliet balconies. We're trying to work with the cubist style. Next.
And so this was just kind of highlighting those buffers and setbacks that I mentioned. I won't go through them, but just know that we've increased all of them. And the next slide. I wanted to just highlight this a little bit with the retaining walls, and I do know that we have retaining walls on this side, but what we're proposing are to terrace them or tier them and have landscaping that's going to be in between those terraces. And we think that that's really going to help soften the walls. And the one thing that I would reiterate is that from Barron Cameron, you're not looking at the wall is on our side, if you will. So we hope that that will maintain the appropriate visual appearance from Barron Cameron. And the last two slides that we have, these are the 2/2 for sale units. And I would ask, I don't know if NVR's architect would be interested in coming up and just sharing a couple of the revisions that he's made.
I'm Jack Judovin. I'm with NVR. I manage the design department there. We're proud to be part of this, working with public-private. We're in an attempt to make Lake Ann House happen, the whole redo of it. We've worked so far with Hickory Cluster, with Reston DRB to try to accommodate their comments, to make a transition, if you will, between the new style of the Lake Ann House and kind of transition down into Hickory Cluster. We've talked a lot with Hickory Cluster as well. We've done things in terms of masonry, the brick veneers, doing more homogeneous colors. Paid attention to the rears as well, the garage doors. We moved the HVAC compressors upstairs out of sight. We've done a lot more landscaping around the perimeter of the building. And really, I know we're here for preliminary approval of the site plan tonight, and we're really here to say, we're glad to work with whomever is going to have the final say on what this building looks like to help make a successful project. So just thank you very much.
Next slide. Can you do the next one?
And the next slide is the rears. And then if we could put up the final slide, this is why we're here tonight. This is the plan that we'd like to hopefully receive conceptual approval. I would just sum up by saying we really do appreciate all the time that you've given to this. It has been, I know, a lot of discussion, and we're hoping that we can go forward this evening to be able to take the next steps. I would just like to say that there are a number of people who are here who are interested from Fellowship House. There may be some confusion. They all don't wish to speak, so I don't know what your list of affected parties might be, but I think that there will only be a few folks who will be interested in expressing the opinions of the residents. So.
Appreciate that. Okay, I think what we'll do, we'll ask questions, then we're going to hear the affected parties, and then we're going to have our comments, okay? So we're just doing questions now. Does anybody have questions? I'll start off. I had a couple of questions on the elevation you showed of the building, and I know we're not talking about that right. Well, I'll back up. We'd asked you at the workshop and before, was there any way you could get rid of the driveway behind the building so that we could increase the amount of buffering? If you go back to your conceptual site plan, that one driveway still wraps around the back of the building. Did you find you could not get rid of that, or?
We could not.
We could not, because
that one ramp there can't change the parking lot.
As you ramp down in, if you ramp down in the building, you lose, of course, a lot of units. That's our amenity floor, and we like to have the see-through lobby. When you come in, you see out to the plaza. There is a lot of grade that we have to go down, and this allows us to come in from behind so that the garage door opening and closing won't affect anybody. Otherwise, if it was up on the top, it would be bothersome probably to the folks that lived up there.
All right. We may come back to what kind of materials are there. The other, on the retaining wall that runs down the, north side of the property along Barron Cameron, can you give us some idea of what the height is at the west end and how tall it is by the time you get to the east end?
And
just generally.
And so that we don't repeat this when we get to me, if you could go around that site and highlight all the retaining walls, their heights and locations,
In this
starting with the
plan.
one that we just talked about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I might ask for Charles P. Johnson maybe to come up just to make sure that we're accurate. I think I have all the numbers,
Sure.
but if I could ask either Hank or Alan to go around the site. I think this, oh, you have it.
So I'm Hank Fox with Charles P. Johnson. So on the wall, retaining wall along Baron Cameron, the average grade of that wall is under 9 feet in height. As you go on the left side, with, starting with around unit 3940, it's 3 feet. Then when the tier starts, the two-tiered wall starts, it's a total of 9, 3, and 6. Midway through that tiered wall, it's 7 and 7. At the corner where the tiered wall comes back together before you get to the senior housing, it's also 7 and 7. And then behind the senior building, the first number is a 12-foot wall, that 5-foot wall, and then down to a 4-foot wall. Along the front, along on North Shore, next to the senior building, the wall closest to the building is a 5-foot wall, and then it slopes down to 2-foot walls.
Can you point to where that is on the
So
screen?
we're trying to
perhaps?
get the it's in the submittal, we're trying to get it pulled in.
So that's not the terrace wall, that's another wall.
It starts from the
I can point to it.
west, the lower west
that'll be
corner.
fine.
Yeah, I can point to it.
And it starts from there.
You're
Yeah.
starting at the west side. That's why we need to point.
So right here, this wall here is about a 5-foot wall. Goes down 2 foot.
So it's landscaped in front of it at that point.
Landscape, there's some slope to it. We did pull the wall back off the right of way some, so that we can, I'm supposed to just hold this, I guess, so that we can minimize the wall height, yeah.
I need to know more about that wall. Can you point again where it is? Is it at the corner of the building?
The 5-foot wall,
So it's right at the corner of the building?
It runs along North Shore.
remember before it used to be something about 8 or 9 foot wall. You all expressed interest, you were concerned how high it was, and as you were walking down the sidewalk, so what we did was pull the wall back, and then we have some slope being landscaped.
No section to show that?
I don't believe we have a cross section that shows that.
Okay, that's it for retaining walls? Okay.
And then there's a walls here along this point. So this point in the middle, which is connected with here's a step, 7 feet tall. And then it goes down to a 5-foot wall as you started to tie out the grades on the end, close to Hickory Cluster. But that's
So when we're standing on North Shore looking at that, we're seeing a 7-foot wall and the building behind it?
Yep.
Right here, yeah. So that's where we're transitioning grade there. We have a lot of landscaping, and then we have a series of steps going up.
Okay. All right, let's keep going with any other questions. One question, but it has to do with the architecture more than the site plan, but your large elevation or rendering doesn't show balconies, but the one on the west end does show balconies, so the balconies disappeared? Or is this rendering doesn't show balconies?
They're there. The Juliet balconies on the corners.
Okay,
They're there.
all right, okay, just curious.
With the dark color, the railing.
Okay, all right, we'll finish our question. Grace, any
You
questions?
covered my question.
Okay, Bruce? Nick?
I got 2 quick ones. Are there still improvements contemplated for Village Road by your application, or is that a future condition by?
No, we're
Reston?
dedicating the right of way. We're not improving.
Okay.
Forest Drive.
And then the second question, back to retaining walls, is the height of the retaining wall tied to tree preservation along Baron Cameron? So if you lower that wall, you're going to bring your site down and potentially
Correct.
impact the tree preservation?
Yeah, we wanted to hold about a 40-foot forested buffer through there.
Okay, and that's how you got
Comment,
7 foot.
one of the comments we had at one time, that you wanted to see something like a 40-foot buffer along there. So that's what we shot for.
Okay. Neil, do you have any
What
other
happens, the
questions?
grade up there is, it's a kind of a plateau, so
Mhm.
the only way to, if you want to reduce the walls is to get cut back into that grade more
Right.
and take out more trees.
Any other?
So the terrace above the garage, can you describe the section there as you come out to North Shore Drive?
Yes.
And a section would have been helpful.
Yeah, and we'll be obviously drawing all of those. We'll have sections going each way as we move further through this, but the plaza's up about 14 feet.
14 feet?
To the top of the railing, the actual slab, depending on where you are, because the grade does drop a little bit along there. But the garage itself has about 8 feet to the underside of the structure, 2 feet of structure, so it's 10 feet. And so actually it's 10 feet maybe to what you call the plaza top.
So a 5-foot sidewalk along North Shore Drive. There's some landscape,
Yes.
3 feet, and then the sidewalk, and then more landscape, and then the wall to the terrace.
Yeah, we have 28 feet between the curb and the building at the closest place. It actually goes back to 30 feet.
So I always see that in the writing, and I can never see it in the drawing. And maybe because I can't find the curb line, or maybe because I don't have a sense of scale, which is why a section would help. It still feels to me like, I mean, you haven't planted anything there between the two arms of the Fellowship House, where the terrace wall is coming out to North Shore Drive. You've got no mature type 4, category 4 trees there at all. You've stopped your street trees. So I'm assuming you don't have 30 feet of landscape. What do you actually have there?
Well, what happens is there is a PUE there.
Yeah, utility easement.
Utility easement, which has prevented us from putting large caliper trees over the utilities.
Yes.
So what we can do is, back in the corners and close up to the building, is put trees on the west side, and then it narrows down to, as you go east, where we'll have lower trees, crepe myrtles, and shrubbery, landscape.
And
So-
we're also proposing, if I can say, tree planters up on the terrace that would be near the rail, periodically placed. We're going to have raised planting beds for the residents for gardening purposes. We're going to have a small fountain. We're going to have passive seating and an active activity area up there. It's about 5,800 square feet up there.
Could
We're
we
just
go-
in the middle of designing it now.
Could we go forward a couple slides, and I think maybe you can see into the one that looks into the plaza, next one there. So there'll be some larger caliper trees on top of the plaza along the edge, as Suzanne said. And that gives the residents obviously a view into Lake Anne.
I mean, you don't have trees spaced out all along there like that rendering shows. There's no room. That's the utility easement. So don't be showing us when that's not what it's going to be.
You're correct. That's. But the
Yeah.
crepe myrtles are bigger than they should be.
To me, the issues that I'll come back to when we finish with these questions and listen to the affected parties remains North Shore Drive, remains Barron Cameron, and making this building look like it actually fits the site.
Okay, we don't have any other questions at this point.
I just had a question on the retaining wall at the two overs. Is that set far enough back from the sidewalk? Those landscaping is going to be between the sidewalk and that 7-foot retaining
Yeah.
wall? Is that the
It is.
design of it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's actually.
It wasn't clear if that's.
Yeah, it's actually, the retaining wall is actually behind the utility easement that's along the property right-of-way there.
Okay, so that'll also
We can
have.
plant shrubs in the right-of-way, in the utility easement.
Right.
We just can't plant trees.
Can you go back to the black and white drawing? The plan? So where the steps are coming up between the two rows of 2/2s, those trees are shown on top or in front of the retaining wall?
On top.
So I understood his question to be, are the trees between the retaining wall and the street? They're not.
No, we're not. But he was asking if there was landscaping between the retaining wall and the sidewalk, though.
So how tall is the retaining wall in that area again?
7
Where the
feet.
steps are 7 feet.
There will be landscaping, just not large trees.
Correct.
More shrubbery and.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? All right, I'd like to welcome all the people from Fellowship House. Raise your hand if you live in Fellowship House here. Good to see you all.
Thank you.
Okay, we've got,
I would also note that we did submit in the materials a written response to some of the comments that we received, so.
yes, okay. These were just questions. You haven't heard our comments yet.
Just a little bit of commentary.
Let's see how, we'll go through this, and if you haven't signed up, the way this works is if you haven't signed up as an affected party, and you're just here because you're interested, that's great. But we'll listen to what all the affected parties have to say, and then if we have time, we'll take a minute and see if anyone has any other thing they'd like to add other than they either support it or don't support it, okay? Okay, we have Ralph and Ann Youngren. Come on up, or podium, or however you want to do this. Is it easier for you to sit down, sir?
I'd like to sit. Can I sit?
Yes,
Please.
sir.
Pass out some time.
And you know, push the microphone over closer to him, if you would. Stereo.
I think you should pass.
Pass these out?
Sure, sure.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe 3 or 4 there, all the people at the end of the table get one. We have about 10 or so.
I'll come back. Okay.
Well, my name is Ralph Youngren. I'm a fellow in the AIA. I've spent my whole career on design. We live in Hickory Cluster. We've lived there for 15 years. We have been to 3 or 4 of these meetings, and each time we were told that the next presentation would improve, get better. But it has gotten better by a few feet each time. I think the housing could be vastly improved. I made 2 sketches of it, and those are just sketches, you know. But somebody should look at how Reston was founded. We knew Bob Simon. He said it was a place for people to meet with trees and ground cover. The site there has no ground to meet. If somebody wanted to have a farewell party, what would you do in the driveway? It's all asphalt and buildings. And each building is 4 stories high. That's about 30 or 40 feet. And the space between them is mainly garages on some. You go down the street and it's solid garage doors. I think that's almost unbelievable. I've been so exasperated by that house site plan. And I did 2 sketches of how I thought it looked better. And those are just sketches. But somehow, nobody has looked at how Reston was going to be founded with spaces for people to meet, to get to know each other. This almost looks like you're going to, a bedroom community. You're going to spend nights there. But if you want your kids to play, to toss a football, to do any kids to sit around and talk, there's no place. There's no outdoor space. And I think that is one of our main objections. And both of those schemes, I've tried to show a central space that would work. Now, I think Fellowship House has vastly improved from when I first saw it. I think it's gotten much better. But I think the housing has stayed sterile. It has, in my mind, no merit as far as the plan goes. It's solid buildings and asphalt. Something has to be done. Now, maybe you could approve going ahead with the Fellowship House, but I think something more has to be done with the housing. I just think it doesn't fit anything. And you keep saying that people in Hickory Cluster have been advised. It follows Hickory Cluster. I've looked at the elevations. The front elevation has small windows and some, I guess, plastic siding or something. Vinyl siding. And the other side is all vinyl siding. I knew Bob Simon had said he couldn't stand anything like that.
We've done our 3 minutes.
Do I have to stop?
Wrap it up.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
that's okay.
Okay.
Well, we would love to have, as Ralph said, these are just sketches, and we thought that the architectural firm might provide some other sketches as further suggestions. And I know Lynn has answered all of Ralph's comments, but we are not particularly happy, of course. I mean,
Okay.
why can't we have some of these? Why, for instance, is it not possible to have curved buildings? Lynn just said it's not possible, but we wondered why.
Okay, we'll get to that. Thank you. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Okay. So we ended. Hope for the housing.
James Livingood? No? The Hickory Cluster Association, care of TWC Management?
No.
No?
Is that for TWC or for the Board of Hickory Cluster?
Well, this just says Hickory Cluster Association, care of TWC Association. Okay.
My name is Michael Smith, treasurer of the board. I will not repeat everything that Ralph said. First, I want to say we very much value Fellowship House, what it represents to the community. We do have issues with the architecture, and I'll make this very brief. In 1965, Look magazine, Hickory Cluster and the original Lake Ann Center had a 8-page spread in the Look magazine. It's a place that people come for decades to review and see what was done here. And unfortunately, it wasn't repeated everywhere across the country, but these things happen. What we're concerned about is this space right there. Where is the wow? Where is it going to be in Architectural Digest? Where is it going to be in whatever passes for Look magazine nowadays? So where is the, where's the dream? Where's the vision? And this, I don't mind the looks of these. If they were built anywhere else between here and Leesburg, they would fit in. But in this particular spot, I really do wish that the settings, the way, as Ralph said, the way they're set on the land is repositioned. And look at it. A lot of us would prefer one building of luxury condos versus this asphalt and parking lot configuration. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Okay. Were you Michael?
Michael Smith.
You're Michael. Okay.
I'm Michael Smith, not Michael Foss.
Okay. Michael, the cluster president, is that someone different?
Yes, that's Michael Foss is the president, I am the treasurer.
Is he here?
Couldn't be here.
Okay.
He did register as an affected party, and I see you have some of his, he was discussing the window framing.
Right.
So but it's not here.
Okay.
so.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, that's the next item. Okay, those are the only affected parties I had listed. Yes, sir, with the hand waving. Have to come up to a microphone so we can record every.
I think I'm an affected party. John Lovis from Washington Plaza Cluster.
Okay, weren't on my list, but you're always affected, so.
Effected or affected?
I didn't say that.
I'm the Washington Plaza Cluster president, right across the road. I'm going to be very brief. I went through the process and I've seen the various versions, and I think there's been a tremendous improvement on the senior living building. I think that's much better. I spend a lot of time around here, so it's very important. The houses I'm just terribly disappointed with, and I share Ralph Youngren's comments about it being a concrete block with too much in that space and no living, nothing green between the outside, inside that perimeter. That's a terrible place. Now, maybe if they took out one of those lines of houses, you'd have something that you'd have some space where people could get together. You'd have some green. This, as it is as far from Bob Simon's wish for this community as I could possibly imagine. I also would like to agree with his comments with regard to the plastic look of those buildings. It doesn't look like Reston. It shouldn't be there in that form. Again, it looks like they've tried to cram too much in that space. Maybe if they took a few units out, they could make something that would have some green and be a lot more Reston-like. The other side of the project is fine. That's it.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, now we'll get back to comments from the board. See where that leads us. I have a couple of things I would like. I'll start off this time. This will be a little bit different, but we're here looking for conceptual site plan approval tonight, not necessarily the architecture, although that's always part of what we're talking about. Some of the concerns that I have, this has to do with the site and all the Reston master plan and all this other kind of stuff we've been talking about, we always ask people to respond to whatever's there to begin with. That means the topography, trees, the natural environment, so on and so forth. Some of the concerns I have, I mean, generally, I agree with everyone. I think that they've done wonders with the placement of the fellowship house. And I wish that driveway at the back could go away. It would give us a whole lot more buffer from Baron Cameron. But that said, I'm mildly confused about how all this works. And it's a little bit like, it seems to me, I mean, this has a lot of topography to it. It slopes, it drops from one end to the other, I forget, 20, 25 feet, stuff like that. And it seems like it's all being taken up with retaining walls on both sides, so that you basically have a flat terrace for the houses more than the big building. That's what I'm talking about now. So that everywhere you look as you go around the site, there's a retaining wall of some form. It's gotten better on the Baron Cameron side, but on the North Shore Drive, I have a real problem with that. I mean, the layout of the houses is a whole other thing, and I agree with some of the affected parties, Mr. Ralph's comments and Michael's comments and so on. It's a whole lot of paving, and there's a project, not to criticize this, it's out of our purview, but there's a project in the corridor going up that I'll say it's 60 units. I can't remember what it is. It's all townhouses, and it's an identical plan to this. Unfortunately, the DRB has no purview over that, but we would be saying a lot of things about that in terms of the landscaping and how it works and so on and so forth, but it's exactly that model of lots of concrete and houses. And so I'm still a little disappointed in that layout, and I'm really disappointed that if you basically have a retaining wall all along North Shore, from one end to the other. And I just have a real problem with that. There's no acknowledgement of the topography of the site. And I think that's a problem. That's one of my biggest problems with this. That said, if it appears that, then all of the 2/2s, I guess, if they're all at the same elevation, because what you've done is with the retaining walls on both sides, you've made a flat area in the center. And if that's what's going on, that's not acknowledging the topography at all. So I've got an issue with that. I mean, I wish you'd get rid of all the retaining walls. I know some are going to be important, and some places you have to do it. But if the whole point of the retaining walls is to make the whole 2/2 area flat, so there's no variation up and down, so some buildings aren't higher than the others. At the workshop we talked about, I mean, all of your elevations here show a flat front. Your site plan shows that they're actually staggered. They're little nods to making this, more interesting. But if all the retaining walls are just making this thing flat and everything's all at the same level, that's kind of an issue. The,
Can we respond to that?
I'm on a roll.
Okay, because it is
Give me a
very-
second.
Okay.
It's our turn to talk, and then you can take notes, and then you can come back and, talk to us, but we kind of got to get this out here. I think, okay, so retaining walls is a big issue of mine. The consistency of the heights above the grade, if that's because you flattened the whole thing out, I mean, it's reminiscent of Monticello where they just, dear Tom cut off the top of a whole mountain so it would be flat. And if it's kind of what we're doing here, that's, an issue. The material along the main building, if indeed we end up with this, I mean, it's basically a big retaining wall, but it's got a parking garage behind it. And at one point, I think somebody said it was 14 feet to the height of that, to the top of that, which is the railing around the terrace and so on. When we get to that, if it stays this way, that material is going to be really important, that it be something more natural looking, something. It's going to have to really be thought about quite a bit. So anyway, since we're only really talking about the site plan tonight, I'll stop with that. Those are my main concerns. Okay, so we'll start. Let's start here. Nick?
Sure. I'm going to start with a comment kind of addressing the perceived lack of outdoor amenity space here and give my personal feeling. I've lived in a condo for 5 or 6 years in Reston, and I take advantage of a lot of Reston's Reston's outdoor amenities, so I don't know if it's fair to say that residents here don't have those opportunities. So that's just my personal opinion. I think there are outdoor spaces, and the way people live nowadays who might be seeking these units out, I think would enjoy the type of spaces here. To hit that point, my second point is regarding the 2/2s. I don't think it's my position on this board to determine the types of housing for the project, but to work with the applicant to make the housing type fit into the development. I think that's what we're going to get through in this planning process, but I think there is a way for the 2/2s to fit in here and become a community in Reston and a new housing type in Reston through working with this board. There's been comments about the concrete jungle feeling here. I think that can be overcome if we can work with the applicant on different paving patterns, ways to break that up. That way it doesn't feel, the renderings are tough. I know it presents in 2D, but by changing some of those colors there, you can eliminate some of that white, and perhaps it feels more like a Lake Ann Plaza where there are different paving patterns and things that break that space up. So that doesn't give me as much heartburn as some of the things I've read on here. The one comment on the layout that I have is that unit 59 and 60 with the garage facing the entrance gives me a little bit of heartburn as you come through the access there. I don't know what can be done about it. I don't know if that stick can be kind of rotated a little bit so that the garage is not facing directly the entrance road. Could the entrance road turn in to the right so that you're not coming up at it? It would be something I would like to see studied a little bit more. But I'd also like to thank this group for working with us and responding to a lot of our concerns throughout this process and getting to where we are tonight to continue this discussion.
Okay. Charlie?
Well, I was just thinking in the concept of the retaining wall. Is that currently the elevation of the land that it needs a 7-foot wall, or is it being built to level that property? And could the north-south units step down where that could be a sloped land instead of having a large retaining wall, reduce the retaining wall to some reasonable amount and grade the property? I don't know what the existing elevation is of that property. Is that currently that height because of the existing building? Or is it where the wall along North Shore by the 2 overs, if they could be stepped down and slope the property so as not to have such a high retaining wall, and I think it would add some architectural features to have the buildings step. I mean, you get into a cost problem too, of course, when you start.
The buildings are stepping as you come down along there, and then get a response.
Well, they're stepping toward
They're
North
stepping
Shore?
towards North Shore, but you can only do 8-inch to 16-inch increments in this size area that we have.
Right, I mean, there is a limit though.
There is a limit, exactly.
So the property where this group of three is not flat, it actually is sloping
Sloping
towards.
down. That's correct.
And you still in the 7-foot wall.
We got, I mean, right there's the thinnest part of the site, basically, between the buffer that we have, and you're changing grade of over 20 feet.
Oh, okay,
So it's, you're having to make up grade somehow.
correct, okay. Okay. Bruce?
I'm conflicted because we feel that we've made progress on really the fellowship house itself, the 2+2s. Frankly, for myself, we've made comments at the working session, and a number of those things were addressed in this plan. So it's this problem that we always have, that we make incremental improvement, but then we see what we have left, and we feel that you've listened to what we've said, but now we see that other things more clearly in that concept. So like I said, I'm conflicted with hearing what the concerns are of the community. I guess it's a long-winded way of saying that I'm comfortable with the fellowship house. I'd like to understand better if there's anything we could do to address some of the concerns of the community. The suggestion by folks that were here about 2+2s, I think the 2+2s are challenging for those of us in Reston. It's a new, I think there are no 2+2s.
There's some next to South Lakes.
South Lakes, but
South Lake Center has a couple, one development that has.
yeah, I was thinking that we had looked at them in Tall Oaks, but, so that's still something that we're wrestling with because it's new, but I guess what I'm saying is I'd like to hear how we could possibly address some of the concerns that were expressed in those presentations.
Okay. Grace?
I'd like to start by saying I really appreciate your response to the comments from my colleagues. Unfortunately, I missed the work sessions, especially with regard to the height of Fellowship House and that location. There's significant improvement. I appreciate the response to the retaining walls as well. I do agree with Charlie to see if we can try to work with the existing topo and the 2/2 units. In response to what Bruce has already mentioned and some of the comments that we got from the community is to continue with the character and the uniqueness of Reston community is really, really important. And I feel like with this layout, I do appreciate it, but I feel like there needs to be more of a sense of community where we're not just going to these places, to the homes, but there's more, some sort of a meeting area that feels more people can gather around the community. And I know we're not getting into architecture right now, but again, it may be a bit challenging when you look at Hickory Cluster as it is adjacent to what is being proposed. I really don't see where the inspiration comes from with the architecture there. So that's what I have.
Okay, thank you. Neil?
So this is difficult, to say the least, and I think it speaks to the nature of redevelopment of established areas, and it speaks to the difficulty of trying to do good architecture, which is this board's goal, in the midst of necessary compromises that abound on this property. The easements, keeping existing fellowship house in existence while new fellowship house is built, topography, Lake Anne, everything that Reston began is right across the street. I can't imagine a more precipitous change to a piece of property than what this is proposing. And I think, we've laughed in the last few meetings that it's okay, when it's okay becomes our standard, we maybe aren't living up to what we set out to do. And yet when I look at this site, I'm having a hard time believing that we're all going to go, wow, that's great. That really worked out swell. I think it's all about compromise. And I think that Fellowship House in particular, we're accepting because it's such a reality. It's such a pressing need. You know, there are tax credits that expire and residents that need a place to live, and we're all sympathetic to that. And this massive building, a whole story less than last time, in no way is going to feel like it fits comfortably on that site. I just don't see how any of us can pretend that that's going to fit comfortably right up next to North Shore Drive, right up on Barron Cameron, no tree cover on either side. It looks like it was a development necessity, a solution to all sorts of pressures, and this is what we came up with that is better than what it used to be, but it's just okay. And I can sit here and try to get comfortable with that, which is what sometimes we do, and I think that's what we're in the process of doing. I just want to call it out for what it is. I think we're getting comfortable with it. I don't think it's going to feel like it was a parcel of land that building fit comfortably on. I think it's going to look like it was wedged in there. I 100% agree with Richard's comment that the driveway along Barron Cameron is a huge culprit. I mean, it doesn't really even fit. It has to slide under one corner of the building even to work as well as it does. And you're going to see all of that from Barron Cameron. It's not like that artifice is going to be camouflaged. It's not. It's all right there on view. And then you come in Village Drive to North Shore Drive, and the building is right on the street. And you've got the parking garage right there, and everybody's going to know that's got any sense at all that that's what that terrace is. It's a parking garage sitting there. And there's no street tree. And I can still get comfortable with it. It's an urban entrance. It is a village center. We don't have to get to the tree-lined North Shore Drive streetscape right away. We can have sort of this urban edge. And if we really do it well as Grimm and Parker can do it, it'll be maybe pretty good, maybe better than okay. And it's a huge challenge, just a huge challenge. I mean, this is gateway. This is gateway with a capital G to everything that, you know, when I visited Reston for the first time 40 years ago in architecture school, that's how you get there, right in Village Drive. So anyway, that said, really wish the driveway along Barron Cameron could go. Really, 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 really wish it, because then we could plant new trees, we could move the building maybe further away from North Shore Drive. Just, I know you've been down this road, I know you say you can't do it, but I'm saying again, if this thing wants to fit like it reasonably could be expected to fit, that's what would start to let that happen, as far as I can see. On the 2/2s, you know, we have approved these things at Fairways, we've approved them at Tall Oaks, and now here it is right again on North Shore Drive, adjacent to, as people have said, everything that Bob Simon started. And I don't typically go around evoking Bob Simon because I recognize that, you know, things change. But, you know, we said 10 years ago on Fairways probably, these are such confusing buildings. Where is the front? What is the back? I still don't get it. I mean, the 2/2s along the north edge, the fronts, I presume, are facing out towards Barron Cameron. And so the backs, as Nick said, are what you see as you drive onto the site. And the front is facing Barron Cameron. I mean, I don't think people still get Reston at all when I see this kind of thing. It's just not, it's like Barron Cameron is the street, and that's the front door that you're facing out to the street, except nobody can get there, and you got to go down a really long sidewalk. And so I think everyone ends up coming through the garages, is my guess. I don't know. Which segues to a future comment for when we get to the architecture. I think the 2/2s are really bad, not to mince words. I think the back sides are better than the front sides. They have more rigor to them. They look more modern. They look more architectural. The fronts are just not even close to anything yet. You know, is the bar higher because we're right here next to Lake Ann and Hickory Cluster? I would say absolutely. The bar is higher. You know, things we might approve in other locations just don't fit in this case. I appreciate Mr. Youngren's studies. The county isn't interested. The developer isn't interested. This board's interested. I think what we have is, again, product that goes everywhere else. There's a lot of pavement. You know, 30 units, as Mr. Youngren showed in his sketches, can fit on this site without doing this kind of arrangement. So where does that leave us? I'm not sure yet. The 7-foot retaining wall along North Shore Drive, it goes back again to me saying, well, maybe I can get comfortable with that. It's kind of, you know, this urban edge of Village Drive, and it's disappearing slowly, and by the time you get to Hickory Cluster, you're to the real Reston, and you're past all of that new stuff. I think this site is going to stand out like all that new stuff because of these retaining walls really badly. I mean, but maybe that's okay, you know, so, you know, again, I can sort of imagine it'll be okay, because it is new, and things change. So what are the principles that guide us? The quality of the architecture at least should be there. Bob Simon had his own opinions about what quality architecture was that I didn't always agree with. But he knew when something was different. He knew when something was leading edge. He knew when something wasn't just more product. And this is too much product for the 2/2s. It's just too much of what we see everywhere else being put on this site in a very sensitive location in a way that's pedestrian and not very great. So I guess, you know, if we're trying to form a way to a motion, it's going to have to be a pretty good motion for me to support it. I think we are close on the senior housing, and maybe again we're going to settle just a little bit because it's so difficult and it's so important at the same time. But the 2/2s, I think we ought to at least put our stake in the ground on those and insist they be better.
Okay. Any other comments from the board at this point?
Can I respond to a couple of things, particularly on
Sure.
the site plan? But before I forget it, we can go as VDOT if we can do further plantings in their right of way if you want additional screening, because there, it's not just, you know, we have our land, but then there's the VDOT right of way. I know that there's the one telephone line or 2 lines in there, but we will make that request of them so that we can get additional screening. As far as the site plan is concerned, all of you are right, it is trade-offs. To put 60 units on that site, you either have a green space in the middle and you're pushing the buildings farther out and you're having less buffer, or you're have the site plan we have. You all made it abundantly clear to us that you did not want units facing North Shore or backs, and that's why we completely changed the orientation of having, which were the 2 proposed sketches that we were asked to do additional sketches of facing North Shore. So that's why we ended up this way as opposed to the other way. Now we could be putting a grassy area in the middle, but it means pushing the buildings back to create that grassy area and facing North Shore again, and then pushing closer to Hickory Cluster. So we've tried to do what you've asked us to do in the work session. And you're right, it is a compromise. So we're here with this site plan in this layout. Now, as for the topography and the changes in the site, maybe Hank can speak better, that it isn't just
Yeah, it's not, the top of it is, we don't have it totally flat. We are changing grade through the site. As I mentioned before, the thinnest part has over 20 feet of grade change, so you have to put it somewhere. Now, maybe the architecture can take some of that up too. We certainly understand that, and that's something we'll look at. Having to build the new Lake Ann house building being held by the old one, it is also a hindrance to ourselves too. So, we're locked in certain things there.
And I guess the last thing I would say is that we're really hopeful that we can get some good direction on Fellowship House. I think that is a significant investment that we need to know that we're on the right path to be able to go forward. I think that our preference would be some type of endorsement, if you will, of the two of the twos, with the understanding that we will work on that design further. But we really are hopeful to have some sort of recognition that we can go forward with that.
I just had another question. I mean, we're playing around with how all this works. I was just sitting here doodling. One of the points of concern is what would be the eastern wing of the Fellowship House and how close it gets to North Shore. Would there be any possibility of lengthening the other wing so it bridged over this driveway that we're all crazy over and make up the difference there in units so you could then pull back the right-hand wing, we'll call it 20 feet or more, if you extended the left-hand wing bridging over the driveway, just a thought. It's almost the same amount of square footage, might mean a little whatever, but then it would really pull it away from North Shore. I mean, just something to think about. I'm not saying this will solve the problem, but there are things like that just tweaks here and there could really help. I think everyone's kind of saying that we really think the Fellowship House is getting real close. And there's still some stumbling blocks, the topography, the retaining walls, so on, are still of concern, but perhaps you've already helped with that. The last time we talked at the workshop, the retaining wall on North Shore started at 9 feet. You found a way of getting it down to 5 feet, I think you said. 5 feet down to 0, that's good. But maybe there's some other minor tweaks you could do. I mean, I think if you're looking for direction, I think we could probably get to the point where with some stipulations and some concerns and thoughts, Fellowship House could probably get some form of a motion.
But for us, it is one site plan.
Yeah, I understand that.
Wasn't there not an issue, did you not try to move the Fellowship House back a little farther, and the fire department said, no, you had to be within
So I don't know if
30
the fire
feet of the
marshal would
road?
have an issue of moving that wing back with it.
Well,
Or she.
not the direction he wants to move it. He wants to move it away from, did you say Village Drive, didn't you? Or were you saying North Shore?
He wants
He wants to move it no matter what.
The wing that's closest to North Shore
No,
at
over
the
here, I
corner.
understand that part.
If you could cut that off and add it somewhere else, that's kind of what I was asking.
I mean, the fire marshal does have its regulations that we have to adhere to, so. And there might be other ways of working with it, though, too. Fire lanes or something like that, so.
So not to pile on with the problems, but to me, it's not just the proximity, it's a garage. You've got openings into a garage right on North Shore Drive at a pedestrian level, right?
Yes, and we actually talked we were working with Public Arts at Reston for doing some art amenity on this site, and one thing to do is something artistic with those openings. Something is just to screen them in some other way, so doesn't pull your eye to it. We've got opportunity. It's an architectural opportunity, which we will look to Grimm and Parker to solve.
And we've already accepted that it's going to be a closed garage, so we'll be artificially ventilating it. So what happens on the wall can be anything. In fact, at one time we actually had units. But once we dropped the floor, parking had to move over. Get the spaces in, we lost the units, but we can do anything to the wall so that, however, to artwork or any kind of designs we can look at. There's a number of ideas that we have.
Maybe back to the green stuff, maybe there's some espalier or some sort of trellis stuff that you can grow stuff on. That's how beautiful I think it's going to be, right? I mean, they've done that pretty successfully at Town Center and some of the better garages over there. So it can be.
You're talking about green screens?
Green screens, yeah. I mean, I mean, it's a reality because we flipped the building. Now the parking garage is right there on North Shore Drive. And it's immediate. You know, I just, when I was rambling earlier, I just want to say this. I mean, this board doesn't always get it 100% right. My goal is to not be entirely embarrassed by something we approved. How's that for a low hurdle, Bruce? I mean, we don't want to be entirely cringing every time we drive by this thing. My God, look what we approved.
Any other comments from the board?
A question for the architect. I might miss this. The reason why the drive behind the building has to be there is because of floor space above. Is that correct? You can't get down quick enough to get underneath. So would higher retaining walls along the perimeter get the building up higher to eliminate that drive? Just in theory, is that a kind of a push-pull that could be done, or is it just not?
The problem is you're kind of up on this plateau that's been created,
Right.
and now you've got to go down 12 feet.
So bringing a building up that high,
I
cost-wise.
think it would hurt you on North Shore then.
Mhm.
Now you've raised the,
Yeah,
we're
raise
trying
it.
to sink the building as much as we can into
Sure.
the ground. And if we could hide the parking even more by berming or doing something, we would love to do that.
It's pretty much on grade from Village Road side.
Those roads,
And
okay,
You're held by the other side with the existing building in place.
right.
So, yeah, that's the 12 feet that we have to work with.
Okay. You guys have any other comments?
No?
I guess we have to try to get some form of a motion together here.
I didn't know if there was a resident, there were a lot of residents here, if one of them was assigned to speak, but I didn't know if you were allowing them. Eddie? Eddie, do we have one resident? Do you mind? Thank you.
Hold on, we got the guy coming up from the back already. Oh, he stopped, okay.
Good evening, my name is Alfredo Diaz. I've been living in Lake Ann Fellowship House almost 3 years. And since moving, I've been listening about this project back and forth, that they're going to develop a new fellowship house. It's almost going to the 5th year, and they still haven't materialized with the plan. If the plan materializes, there's going to be another probably 4 years before building. So some of those senior citizens over there might not ever see it, the new building on the apartment complex, because of the age factor. You talk about Bob Simons. If Bob Simons, rest in peace now, if he was alive, he wouldn't approve the big brown elephant what Balducci is going to be. Neither the apartment complex across the street, the yellow elephant. So you all keep debating, Bob Simons' concept near the fellowship house, and in the meantime, these people from many other countries that come to see a nice settlement living here in the United States, they will never see the dream come true of the new apartment complex. You know, you all come with this idea, say, well, both Simons is those, and then the association of the neighborhood complain about this and that. You know, it's a fellowship house. We're not talking about a village or a condominium. It has to be simple concept. I understand you want to keep the beautification and the nature of the environment. That is very important. That is true. But in the meantime, why it's taking so long? Almost 5 years. It's going to be another 5 years before we build it back.
I
I don't think it's fair for the residents.
I'm sympathetic with what you're saying. This came before us about 5 years ago. We didn't hear anything for 5 years, and now they've come back. So we haven't held them up for 5 years. That's not our problem. We didn't cause that problem. So we've been dealing with this for about 3 or 4 months now, after a 5-year absence. So we're not holding it up at all. We're trying to get through this as best we can. But we're not the reason 5 years
What is
disappeared.
what you want to expedite? You keep complaining that the angle, that the on Lakeshore Drive, that the doors of the garage, you know, it's cosmetic, really. Why don't you approve to break the grounds and start the development, you know, adjustment, cosmetic can be very easy for the architects. The foundation is the foundation.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of issues we have to deal with here, and one of the things everyone, I believe, loves about Reston is there's sort of a natural quality of Reston. So the background of a lot of what you're hearing us say is to put a building like this down on that corner becomes way more urban than suburban. And that's kind of what we're contending with. We're also losing how many hundreds of trees in the middle of the site. All the guidelines, the Reston master plan, everything says keep the trees, keep the trees. So we're having to try to respond to that and see, well, how can we make that work as best we can? So that's what we're trying to do here, okay? And we haven't held anything up. The last 3 months we've had meetings, workshops, and so on, trying to get to a point where we can approve a plan. So I appreciate what you're saying, but, oh, I gotta be quiet.
Trees can be replaced. I mean, you even can replant, grow trees.
That's a losing argument, okay, but I understand. I understand.
Thank you.
Thank you, though.
Could I just point out that the examples that he gave were not buildings that were within the purview of this DRB? So,
Yeah, I wasn't sure which buildings he's talking about.
The one at the town center.
town center, in the
Oh.
town center.
Yeah, a lot of, yeah, we have a limited amount of purview, and I believe the buildings you were talking about weren't approved by us, because we didn't have purview over them.
Wouldn't have been.
So we have one more resident that we'd like.
Yes, sir.
My name's Steve McAvoy. I'm a resident in Fellowship House for 7 years now. I feel incredibly blessed to be there and at Lake Ann. Our buildings are in really rough shape, almost 50 years old. The guts of rough shape. I know quite a bit more than others because I used to work there. The plans that we've seen, our presentations have been just great. Wonderful people here. You guys are great. Mr. Roseberry, I appreciate your comment about how difficult it is, but it's just so important. So, and Mr. Newland, you're flipping the building around. I saw that on the video. Amazing what you did there and what they came up with that. It just, we thank you very much. Hope you get us to the next step.
That's what we're here for.
Thank you. Thanks all.
Thanks for coming forward. Are you just waving at me, or do you want to talk?
Hi, sir. My name is Nick Caracas.
Hi, Nick.
I'm a volunteer with the Medical Corps of Virginia. I also live at Lakeland. What's important that you should know is that the retaining walls are a flood stop. It stops the flood. In 2011, there was a very bad tropical storm. You all lived in Reston, correct?
Mm-hmm.
You know about it. I mean, the cars were up to the roofs in the water. I just want to bring that to your attention. It's not just about the trees.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
But I think we all thank you for working on this, working with us. We thank you.
Okay. We're going to leave it to the board to
Thank you.
discuss where we are. Where are we? I have some concerns that, I was hoping we would get to the point where we could, go for a conceptual approval of some form. And I don't know how we can do that. It seems like we're real close with the fellowship building itself. But I think there are two big concerns I see is the outlay, the layout of the houses and the desire for product, to use Neil's word, as opposed to designing something that really works here in Reston. That and the amount of retaining walls that I find discouraging, because if you drive down North Shore and all you're seeing is a 10 to 14 foot high wall that's all a parking garage, and then when you get down by the 2/2s, it's only 7 feet high, that's just discouraging. I can't think of a better word for it, so I don't know how we can get around that. I mean, if we, this is us talking up here now, if we can approve one end of the project because of all the changes that have been made, and I think some very positive things have happened, can we give some direction for the other part, so at least they know, I mean, it's just one person speaking, but I don't think anyone's going to say this can't happen at all. I don't think we're talking about that. But how is it going to happen? I think that's what we're talking about. And how can we both help you guys at the same time do what we think we need to do, which is to preserve some aesthetics in Reston and some of the natural areas, and how this is next to two of our best architectural examples in Reston. And unfortunately, best examples weren't followed everywhere. We have some not so good examples too. But here in particular, between Hickory Cluster and Lake Ann, and again, we'll get to the architecture more, but I think we really have to, at the workshop I emphasized that too, is that if we approve a site plan, conceptually, it has nothing to do with the architecture, it's just a footprint. And we're gonna have to really, get our scales and bumwad and trace and everything else out and try to figure out how can we make these buildings aesthetically fit if we all can agree to a site plan. So that's kind of where we are, or I am. So does anybody here feel like they can make a motion of some form, or is it too far away? Is the hanging up on the 2/2s makes it impossible to make a
I think
motion?
we ought to be able to split the fellowship house from the 2/2s as far as a conceptual site plan. I mean, yes, there are architectural challenges to some of the facials, but location on the plot of land is pretty much where it is.
Well, what if I can ask the applicant? You just said a minute ago it's a whole site plan. I understand that.
Yeah,
Is
because
there any way,
we're in a PRC process, so it's.
Yeah. Is there any way that if, and again, we haven't had a motion or a vote, but if we said the east end of the site with the fellowship house is okay, but we're expecting further design of the 2/2s and looking at the retaining walls, but we could give you, possibly give you a conceptual approval.
And I think if we're just trying to
You
kind
can
of
turn
feel
your
our
mic
way
off.
through this, I'm
You
sorry.
can go out in the hall and talk.
But I
We'll
mean,
wait.
I think it would be very helpful, I think, to us to understand where you are with the Fellowship House building. And my thought would be that if we can come back, we'd like to come back fairly quickly. I know you've seen a lot of us, but you're going to see us again. We'd like to come back fairly quickly with whatever we can do on the 2/2s. I'm just thinking out loud. I know that you meet in July. I can't remember the date off the top of my head, but
It would be something like the third Tuesday, and the 12th.
so maybe the 17th, I want to say. Does that sound about right? So if we could come back on the 17th, or, I mean, alternatively, if you'd rather see us at a work session, we can do that too, but I think we'd like to come back in July and see if we can iron out something with the 2/2s. We're just faced with such challenges, and as everybody says, it's been a balance here as to try to figure this out, but we're certainly willing to give that a try. But we could make that commitment. I mean, if that could be part of someone's motion, we're happy to come back in July.
Okay.
Can I ask this group about two things? One, the retaining walls and the site limitations. I think they've done a good job explaining that in order to relocate the fellowship house to the right, that there's certain constraints that can't be moved on the left side there. And in order to get tree preservation and accomplish that programming, I feel like they've done a great job studying this. I'm not sure what else we can ask from them on that. And my second question is the board's problem with 2/2s, or is it the architecture? Is the actual unit type workable? And then we could get somewhere with a design of those buildings that is great and not just product.
I would really like to see front, back solved for once. Here next to Hickory Cluster, here in this location, and stop pretending that this works, because it doesn't. The front's facing Barron Cameron with the backs facing the entrance drive, and yet on the other units along North Shore Drive, you can't tell what's a front and a back. It's entirely arbitrary. I might have guessed that the unit on the far left, on the far west, would face in the other direction because that's the quote street, but it doesn't. So anyway, I think we're taking easy to take out our frustration on the 2/2s, relatively speaking. I just want to say for the record, if I vote against Fellowship House, it's my pinch point is that southeast corner that's like, it looks like it's like 8 feet from the curb, even though you tell me it's 20 some. That's a garage. I don't think that's appropriate. I don't think that's appropriate. So I just want to be clear where my ongoing concern is. To me, that's going to be one of those, every time I drive by it, we missed it. We should have said no one more time and seen what they came up with. The only power we have on this side of the table is saying no. And that doesn't seem helpful, I understand, but yeah, I just don't think, I'm sorry, for my money, even Fellowship House isn't quite there. And I don't see how I can support a motion when it's not quite there. And I do appreciate all the improvements that have been made.
Well, if we have for example, if we had a motion for conceptual approval with stipulations that we're not approving the footprints of the 2/2s, and we're asking for some additional study of the closest corner, because, I mean, the rendering, if you look at this rendering, makes it look like that corner is about 20 feet away from the curb. It's actually about 4 feet. So it's a little misleading, and I think that's what Neil's...
Or the sidewalk.
Or the sidewalk, or this one, where it looks like there's plenty of room around there.
I mean, maybe we haven't been clear in previous meetings, but we need a section through that. It's as important as the section you did adjoining Hickory Cluster. We need to see the building profile, the curb, the sidewalk, wherever the landscape is. To me, maybe I wouldn't feel so bad about it if I understood it just a little more. I do know that it's not quite like that image.
Not like the rendering, yeah.
We can bring that back to you.
But would it be better if you're going to come back in July anyway, with all the comments, if we deferred it until then?
No. I have to expend the money for the redesign.
Yeah.
I need to know that we have conceptual approval with, subject to whatever you add to it for the senior site, honestly.
My understanding is that we could not give conceptual approval in part. So that seems to me to drive the answer that you can't give conceptual approval, you have to defer it. I don't see
Can
any
you
way
approve
around
with
it.
conditions?
Yeah, we can give a conceptual approval with stipulations. We've done that before. For example, if we had a motion that approved the footprint of the Fellowship House with stipulation that the 2/2s be restudied with a list of whatever, all the things we've been saying, and a suggestion that something be done about that closest corner of Fellowship House, that's legit. We can do that.
Sorry.
Right.
But regarding the landscape and adjacent to the easement area along Village Road, there was some talk about that.
Oh, along Village Road? Well, a lot of that's the potential expanded right away for the expansion of the road. There's utility easements and everything in there. That was something we discussed. There's not a whole lot they can do there, I gather.
And there's really nothing to be done about the entrance to the garage behind the building.
I don't mind the corner of Fellowship House. I mind the garage, just in terms of my own perception of what's going to feel egregious. I just want to ask, is there any way the garage can be slid towards Barron Cameron without moving the footprint of the building that's on top of it?
At one point, I think you all mentioned you had units all the way down to the ground there.
That was when it was flipped over.
Yeah, that was...
The other way around. Is that possible to have units going down to the ground at that closest corner there?
I think we can
question
adjust
answered.
that corner so that everybody be happy. I mean, we can do something there.
Say your question again.
Well, it just seemed to me that the terrace itself, which is the garage, could slide north and protrude on the Baron Cameron side of the building some without exceeding the corners of the building there and get it further away from North Shore Drive. I don't know if it's a podium type construction and your building on top doesn't need to follow exactly what the garage down below is doing, but it felt to me like the terrace could slide back without moving the footprint of the tower that sits on top of it.
Again, we'll just have to take a look at the geometry. It's
Parking layout, all that.
parking layout.
Yeah.
And of course, we also have to line up the elevators, and we have some plans above, so it's a number of things. But I definitely know we can fix the corner.
Well, anybody want to hazard a motion of some form?
I still want to understand, if we're going to have so many conditions, what are we accomplishing?
Incremental progress. That's all.
I just want, from your perspective.
From our perspective, it gives us enough assurance for us to release the architect to continue the design work for the building.
That's what I wanted to understand.
Because we have
Not
flipped the
flip it over
building,
again.
which means that we need to redesign the building.
Well, I'm not sure anybody here is talking about redesigning the building at this point of the footprint. I think,
No, but it's already been redid. So
Yeah,
we
we've
have
already
to,
done that.
we've already, when we flipped it, now
Yeah.
we have to get further design work done because the building's now flipped.
I can support a motion with strongly worded advice to the applicant to bring further studies for how the garage and southeast corner of the building interact with North Shore Drive. I mean, you know, if you don't satisfy us, if we let you through the gate here, and then architecturally it's not satisfactory later, you haven't gotten that much.
We understand.
And your hearing, it's, at least for me, and I'm just one vote, I just think it's where the project doesn't fit the site.
well, I guess we got to make some action. I'll go on and make a motion. Let's see where it goes. It's been hard to list all these different things. I'll make a motion to give conceptual approval to the plan with the following stipulations. That our concerns seem to be seeing what they can do to redesign this, we're calling it the southeast corner of the Fellowship Building. So it's either further away from North Shore, or it becomes more units, so it's not just this huge wall, which we've all certainly objected to. And possibly look at shifting the parking garage, if that's at all possible, so that the terrace level shifts back from the face of the building, so it's a little more recessed. So instead of this continuous wall of some 100+ feet or 200 feet, at least has a break in it, that if that front terrace level pull back allows more landscaping and so on right in the center of the building, I think that would help a lot. And then the site plan layout of the 2/2 units, I think you're hearing a lot of things need some restudy to, and again, we're not talking architecture yet, but to do something that increases more green space, general livability, to look at, again, to use the word product, it's just too much product that could be anywhere, and I think, you know, you have to really look at some of the other townhouses and over 2/2s. I mean, even the 2/2s next to South Lakes vary in terms of their elevations, so that you kind of, in some cases, enter, if there are 4 floors, you enter at the second floor. So the lower unit, you go down 1, and the upper unit, you only have to go up 1 to get to. This concerns me a little bit with the door at the lowest level. The person with the upper unit has to climb to the third floor before they're even home. And I think that's kind of a problem, so I think you're gonna have to kind of look at that. And any other issues you can do in terms of the site layout of the 2/2s, and I think creating this podium up 7 feet in the air off of North Shore that has houses on it, I think is a problem. I think you need to look at that. Okay, that's a motion. Is there a second for that motion?
I'll second it. We have to move forward.
Yeah, okay, there's a second.
What is the motion?
Oh, no.
I'll get the secretary, write it all down.
She's good. Watch the tape.
The 7-foot retaining wall along North Shore Drive.
Okay.
Then that, how was the play?
I'm sorry?
How was,
Other than that, how was the play, Mrs. Lincoln?
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Yes. We have to avoid a tie. Okay, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Oh, hands. 5. All opposed? 1. Okay, 5-1. Okay, thank you all.
Thank you.
See you in July.
See you.
Work on it, please.
Help us.
How's that for the power of the board?
Really?
This one now.
Yeah, it's way better than this.
Well,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, some.
Only difference is this one had old folks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Everybody get in the
I'm
bus.
going to bang the gavel. I'm going to give them a minute to get out.
We're going to be beaten up with canes and waffles.
Okay. We're going to pause for 5 minutes to let all the fellowship people get out of the space.
I just don't want anyone on this board to think that we're proving anything good. Because we're not. Much like we better, but they did what Mark Looney does. They take you through enough workshops to find the pitch in.
Yeah. Speaking of which, here we go again. I thought we'd approved this. I don't even know why these guys are back. No, we approved, we possession. Yeah, we did, didn't we?
We improved landscaping and architecture.
They had it, but we didn't.
I thought we approved
It
it.
was only there for us to. It was only there for us to.
I thought we could approve that.
Look at the money.
If I haven't, but maybe I do. Approve site plan, general massing, yada yada, to include general architecture, arts and crafts style, shingle roof, in concept only. Approves a lot.
Well, I didn't. I love that they're from drawings. So presumably they.
No, they had the renderings you're seeing here.
Yeah,
They had that.
No, but it's actually based on an actual set of drawings.
Well, that's what they're coming back for. Yeah, but we approve generally with that. No, I think that is what we saw. Let's see. We'll wait till Margo.
That way we can make up whatever we said. Is the tape rolling?
Everybody okay? All doing okay? Not bad. That's good.
Now that Margo's back. Stop talking.
So noted. Okay, we're ready for a motion now. Sorry, Margo missed the discussion.
You would.
Gentlemen?
Okay. Good evening, everyone. As you know, I'm Michael Rafiti with Kensington Senior Living, and I'd like to thank you for your time this evening. We were before you September of last year. That's the last time we saw you, and we received conceptual approval for massing site plan and elevations. And we're here to show you our progress and let you know what we've done. With me today, I have Steve Ruiz from Mosley Architects, and then Jeff Krebs from VICA, the landscape architect. Since September, we've received Fairfax County approval, zoning approval, for a building up to 66,000 feet and 75 units. The building that we have come up with is about 65 plus or minus, and it's 72 units. During that zoning process, we worked closely with the neighbors and closely with the county, as we always said we would, to come up with a condition that basically says we will work with the Wethersfield folks to develop a transitional screening planting on their property in an agreeable way to us. And then we are in the middle of going back and forth with the urban forester at Fairfax County on that. And the landscape plan that we will present today has shown how far we've taken that today. It's not final, and I plan to finalize it with the county and then meet with the Wethersfield folks and come up with something we all agree on. So we've advanced our plans, our architectural plans, based on the elevations that you see here today, and I'll have Steve talk about that in a second. And we've also come up with a comprehensive landscape plan, and I'll let Jeff talk about that later on in the presentation. So this is the plan that we conceptually got approved through the design review board. I think some folks use the word ski lodge or hunting lodge.
Arts and crafts.
Arts and crafts.
Yeah.
We use arts and crafts. I think we heard ski lodge or hunting lodge. So just a couple more shots, and then I'll let Steve talk about how we've advanced the plans and have refined details.
Welcome, everybody. Or thank you for having us here. And Neil, I was here about 40 years ago too, seeing some celebrations here at Reston at Lake Ann. So an architectural trip up here. So we do recognize this is a great area. We took a lot of the comments from last time. We talked about adjusting the masses, making it look so it's not as elongated and straightforward. And we've done a series of Revit models to show you 3D renderings to show it. And a couple of things that we did. One is we articulated the roof more at the entrances, or actually all the way around the building, dropping the areas below the some of the dormers or dormer-like effects, and dropping the roof line below that, and then just trying to open things up all the way around. We went to a little bit lighter color. We went to a stone buff color for the main portion of the building, and I did bring samples here, and it made it all the way to the back of the room and then go off. So,
Do you want us to pass those around, or how do you want to handle those?
We bring the samples. I think you asked for them a lot of times, and also because renderings always look different depending on what you print on, how you see it, and so that's why we brought these up here. We added some stone accents, and we also went to add a little bit of a wood texture. It's the chestnut brown. I mean, not the trimmed chestnut brown, but a stained maple look, to give it a more woody look, and we did that at a lot of the gable areas, and then surrounded them by stone to articulate the verticality going around the building. We articulated the porte cochere, which we'll see a little bit later, and the entrance to the garage is tucked to the left of the building entrance there. On the east elevation, that's facing the townhouses and such, townhomes, we've articulated it even further. One of the things we did was try to put a lot of our open areas, our plazas on that side. We pulled the building a little bit more away from the one end, and and you'll see later that we heavily landscaped it. Let's go to the next. One of the things we did, go back again. Yes. Having a hard time seeing. One of the things we had on the previous design was at the garage levels, there was concrete base going all the way around. And what we did is start to open it up and try to open up the areas underneath the plaza and such, so that it made it feel more comfortable, and then infilled it with the ironwork in there to make it more decorative. It's hard to see because we have a lot of planting going on around there, and again, the landscape has been pushed around there to make it look a lot better. Next one. Yeah, you can start to see it there. If you see at the lower, on the north elevation, the lower area, the first floor, or it looks like the first floor garage level, those are actually storage and mechanical rooms. We put some windows and stuff in there to make it look like it's a part of the building. To the left is storage and a stairwell and such that are behind the brick area. As we go around to the south elevation, and this is from the southwest corner, I think that's an area where we pulled back the building a little bit, and we started to articulate the openings of the garage. You start to see it down the lower left-hand corner a little bit better. The other thing you can see better in this angle is how all the dormers and the roofs really articulate around the building, and no side of the building looks like the other side. And we don't think there's a front and a back look that much to the building there. This slide here shows you the front entrance, and then it gets into all the different types of materials we have there, the stone being the predominant finish that we have in this area, and then a porte cochere that's not only to protect our residents when they come in, but also allows emergency vehicles to go through there. And again, we try to really articulate the front entrance. This is the upper patio detail. This again is on more of the east elevation. You can see better. This is the best view of seeing how we open the garage and put the ironwork in front of it. The grade comes up on average about 3 foot higher than the garage floor in order to block the headlights and stuff like that, so you won't see the glare of the headlights. And in fact, it's about 12 to 14 feet below the drive aisle going to the townhomes on that east side. This is more of a close-up of our garage entry detail. We didn't want to make it a feature. We're trying to hide it, and it is right at our front entrance. So it is a little bit more demurred right there. Then in the balcony detail, that shows you what we do with our patios. We have that trellis work. There's actually glass panels in there and railings, and we do that so that we have residents in there with memory care, we have memory care residents, but also our assisted living residents. We're never sure when they're going to, cross over to the other side, as they say. So that's all glassed in. It has two purposes. It opens it up to be used more time of the year, and also it allows the views out and doesn't make it feel like they're penned in. And now we're in the shanty. Oh, are straight line elevations. I think that's sometimes what everybody wants us to show. And you can see how the roof, when you look at a straight line, how it actually moves up and down, especially on the entrance side. Okay. And then now we're in the planning concepts.
All right, I'll take it from there. Good evening. I'm Jeff Krebs with VICA, and we did not only the civil engineering but also the landscape design. This is a plan that I believe you've seen before, sort of sets the context, if you will. I'll help you orient Sunrise Valley Drive at the top of the page, the Weathersfield cluster to the right side, and the existing retail functions are to the left of that particular picture. And what you can see, the area that Steve was just describing in the lower sort of lower right of our building is that outdoor terrace area that functions, and we'll get to that, the details of that a little bit later. But this is generally what the site plan will look like from above. So moving into the planting plan, slightly different orientation here. Sunrise Valley is on sort of angling up on the right side of the page. The Weathersfield cluster in this particular image would be on the bottom of the page, and the retail would be to the top. So one of the things that we've been trying to do throughout this process is preserve as much vegetation as possible. What's shaded light green around the building is what has been preserved of the existing canopy, and it is substantial. Substantial enough that the county is willing to waive some of the requirements as it related to, we met all of our canopy coverage numbers and all of that just by the preservation of existing trees. So that was a significant, we think, achievement on our part. In addition to that, so one of the sort of the push me pull you with that whole arrangement is that because we're preserving so much existing vegetation, we don't want to disturb a lot of the existing root zones to plant a bunch of other stuff that's going to ultimately kill, you know, the existing trees. So we're trying to maintain, we're playing a delicate game of enhancing the existing vegetation, providing a lush sort of, you know, garden feature, if you will, for the residents, but also maintain the health of the existing buffer around us. As you go on the page, the top of the page side where the existing retail is, one of the things that we're going to be doing with them is helping to clean out. As you might imagine, it's forest sand that's been there for quite a while. There's a lot of invasive material in there. It's kind of a jungle, if you would, a lot of places. They were happy to have us, to work with us to come in, remove some of that invasive material, and to plant a few trees on their side of the property to help sort of soften the facade of our building as you look at it from that side. So there's a, in addition to the foundation planting that Steve talked about, which is closer to the grill work on the garage, we're planting a little bit off-site as well. And then just working our way around the building, you know, there's planting at the porte cochere. It's what you might imagine, you know, flowering, understory type trees. We don't have a huge amount of room there to plant. And then as we work our way around, it's primarily, there's some planting. There's a couple of parking spots right where that sort of gray O is. That's actually the stormwater structure, which is underneath the parking that's on the surface right there. So we've planted some vegetation there to help screen the parking, screen the headlights shining across the street. More evergreens as you come down the right side, if you will, of the building. And then we get to the back, and what all of the color and all that, what's shown sort of bold in this image is all the proposed vegetation in and sort of above and beyond the preservation of the existing vegetation. This is all consistent with what was approved with the special exception. The pieces that are shown, as Michael said, on the south side of the property line is the heavy line that runs, you know, across the page. What's shown on the south side is the pieces that we're still working with County Urban Forester and the neighboring Weathersfield cluster to come to a final agreement on what exactly we're going to plant, where it's best to be planted. We've met out there already with the Urban Forester. As you heard Steve say, there's about plus or minus 14 feet of grade change from where the townhouses are down to where our building is. So the most effective planting to meet any kind of screening requirement is at the top of the hill, so to speak. So planting it on our side benefits our neighbors, but it doesn't do anything as far as screening for them because it's way down the hill. So we're working with them to try to strategically place what vegetation we can on their side without significantly impacting what's already there. So plan view, that's what that is. Let's go to the next one. So I think you've seen this already. This is, you know, our sort of a, I wouldn't say generic, but it's a plant palette that we feel very comfortable with. It's got a lot of native trees. It's all the usual suspects, native understory trees, dogwoods, red buds, service berries. There are a couple of native evergreens that we'll use for selective screening, flowering shrubs, some evergreen shrubs as well. It's a mix, not atypical of what you would see in any landscape plan in Northern Virginia. We try to limit, of course, certainly no invasive plants, and we try to limit those that are, we don't do anything exotic. Everything that we use is adapted to this region, so there's nothing that you would find that would struggle. But again, this planting plan is not completely finalized, but it gives you a flavor of what we're trying to do. So now we are back on the terrace, which is the open portion that sits atop the garage in the southeast corner of the building. So this is the piece that's, that you can see in the aerial view that's sort of open with a different color, open to the sky. And it is comprised essentially of a number of different outdoor rooms. We have outdoor, basically there are two things that we're trying to accomplish here. We need flexible space for the residents and for management to be able to use this outdoor space in whatever manner they need at a particular time. So all of the furniture that we're showing is movable furniture. There is outdoor dining that can be either clustered or spread apart. You can see some of that on the kind of on the right-hand side. We have soft seating in the center. What's below that sort of page down from that soft seating against that dark gray line would be, we're hoping, would be something like either a fire element or some kind of a, it's probably going to be a fire element. Whether or not it's actually a usable cooking apparatus is yet to be determined, but it's likely just probably one of those, flush linear fire features that is just a visual amenity, but nothing else that's ignited from inside the building. And then to its right, so the lower sort of left-hand corner of this plan is what we're planning to be outdoor garden with small individual planters that residents can adopt, if you will, as their own, and have a small community garden. These are planters that are raised up so that it makes access easy. They are movable in the case that we need to reconfigure that space. And it has an overhead, as you can see in the architectural slide 07, there's an overhead trellis structure that covers that particular corner to provide a little shade, will allow some vines to grow up it, again, to help soften that edge. That trellis structure and what basically surrounds this whole outdoor patio is similar to what Steve showed on the front of the building. The exact material of that and color is still a little bit in the air, but it's all meant to blend in. It's the same. It's going to be the same look as what's on the architecture, in other words. And our goal again is twofold: to one, provide safety for the residents. So it has to be an impermeable barrier, but we need to visually allow you to be able to see through it. So whether that becomes, and we've given some images down there, whether it's plexiglass panels that are framed by wood members that you can see through, or whether it's some kind of mesh, metal mesh that you can see through. The goal is to bring sort of the outside in, if you will, and allow the residents to feel like because they will be outside and they're exposed, but they are also safely contained. There is, on the far left of that plan, there's a gate that gets you out to the walk that takes you around to the front of the building. And then I'll just mention quickly, in the upper left-hand corner of the graphic, there are a couple of small, actually 3 or 4 private terraces right there in the back. So that sort of makes up the other component of this outdoor area. There's a few little private areas, mostly a large public area. There is the sort of garden area in the corner, and then some flexible seating areas. And our hope would be that we would sort of further delineate some of those spaces using a different paving material. Again, we're on top of the garage, so we have some flexibility there of what we put down. But that's the rear terrace area. There are, again, just some simple hardline elevations of what that could look like in elevation from the backside, and then a couple of character images of what we might do there. Again, it's be a mix of materials, probably more metal, more wood-like trellis feeling than the metal, but we may vary it a little bit. Anything else? And we're back to architecture.
That concludes our presentation. And
okay. All right. Let's
forward to your feedback.
Let's do what we did last time. And if anybody has any questions, then we'll have some affected parties, and then we'll come back for our comments. If anyone has any questions, the only question I had right off the top is that terrace at the back at grade?
It's about 3 feet above grade.
Okay. So there are actually going to be some steps coming off of it, or?
Well, if the one corner in the plan view,
So
I don't have.
you can go point.
Yeah. Probably the easiest. This piece, right, that connection right there is at grade. And then it slopes down this way and then down around the corner. So that piece you can actually get at.
So you can get out there. Okay, that's what I was wondering.
No steps.
No steps, okay.
So I've got concern about how this varies from what we approved. There's a whole lot more garage visible than when we approved this last year. We had site sections that showed the garage fully below grade, and they're included in our packet, and I'm looking right at it. And that's not what the rear elevation of this building looks like today. It's got large openings, large amount of grill work. None of that was represented to us when we approved this. And I'd like you to speak to what's actually going on, what the problems are. I assume you're not getting the ventilation you need, things like that.
You're correct. It was all one solid concrete wall, basically, down there. It dropped down. Do we have this section? We have, the grades have pretty much stayed consistent.
Yeah, the cross-section you showed us before showed the grade.
Do you have those
completely-
cross-sections?
Completely.
Well,
It's a large application,
They were the very next thing,
there's
and
167 pages, so.
and what you gave us, it was the very next thing after their application.
Yeah, it should have been after the previously approved page, which would be coming up next, right?
Yeah.
Under scheme one.
No, that was way back. That was,
It's at the beginning.
that was when we were in
So we've
Williamsburg.
all got it. I was just wanting them to see what we're looking at. I mean, hopefully you have what was previously presented too. I mean, you know, we can move ahead with what you now need to do to make the building work, but to me, the massing is not the same when you make that kind of major change. The grade relative to the building is not the same. It makes me wonder just a little bit what else isn't the same. You know, I'm just saying.
If we can find.
I mean, the drawings we saw before where we approved the massing and so on, the grade, according to your cross-section, hit at the, if you have 3 floors, it hit at the floor of the second floor. And now it's taking up half a level.
We also don't have the architectural elevations, I don't think. I guess there's an additional packet.
This is what we approved before. This is
I'm
what
talking
they're
about the 2D elevations that you briefly flashed up. I don't have those.
The line drawings?
Yeah.
No, we did not. We can give them, but we haven't.
the line elevation for it.
Margo, if you go back to the presentation that we had today, I think I have it in the back of the, just the one that.
So we don't have line elevations either.
Okay.
We have controlled perspective views.
There was line elevation.
They don't have them.
While you're looking for that.
Oh,
do we
I'm
have-
sorry.
Do we have any other questions up here? Grace, any questions?
Not.
We'll get the comments in a bit. Bruce?
Not right now, no.
Nick? No questions. Charlie?
I'm curious of 2 things. Where is the backup generator going to be placed? Because I noticed some of this is quite close to the neighbors. And where is the dumpsters going to go? Because I don't see a pad for dumpsters, and you are on a very tight.
The generator will be up on the roof in the roof well.
Okay, that's
The quietest and most out of
Yeah.
vision.
Margo,
place
you can just
put
go
it.
to the presentation that we had. I think I had that slide. But I think that.
So where do the dumpsters? I don't see an enclosed location for the dumpsters on the drawings.
This is the loading area. This is a loading area, right?
I can't access Dropbox.
So the loading area is.
In this, so they will be in the front of the building or outside at the front of the building?
So there's also a pad here where you can fit trash. It's enclosed. And then, or you can have the trash inside. Truck, pull them out. And
See, there's a little, whatever right there. Okay, any other questions?
This is the living area.
Yeah, I see it.
And then there's an outdoor
Fenced,
trash pad.
fenced in. Okay, that's cool.
Just to get it on the record, has the height of the building changed at all from what we previously approved?
The elevation of the height of the building did not change.
So just grade relative to the garage?
So what we did, so from here, this is the patio, I think this is what you're talking about. The section we showed last time was basically right about.
There was a section through the east end of the building, farthest away from Sunrise Valley. Anyway, I don't need to describe it, but
You mean this?
through section 2, yeah, exactly. That's the,
This right here.
yeah, that's not what you're presenting tonight.
Yeah, that shows the grade going right up to the second floor.
The first floor. So the
Well,
garage is
whatever.
totally buried in
Well,
today.
The drawing up above, above you.
Well, both of them.
Well, that one, so in this particular drawing, kind of what Steve was alluding to in terms of ventilation, today this grade, that's why I'm showing this, we don't have.
Right.
That this grade does this today.
Right.
So the garage elevation has not changed, and the height of the building elevation has not changed. We just opened up the garage on
You exposed it on the other side.
on this side.
That
On this
nation,
side here.
that concrete wall was there before.
Correct, some of it was.
Always
Some of it was.
there, it's
exposed,
just where we
some
took
of it was not.
You know, we can argue that the building height elevation as a elevation is the same.
Correct.
But it looks like a 2.5-story building, and we were sold a 2-story building, and it was a big deal. Now, the impact on the neighbors really doesn't change arguably, but it looks like a taller building relative to grade. And that's irritating to me, because this was a long process.
Well, I believe the lower level of the garage still meets the cellar requirement. So
What was
I hear
approved
what
is
you're
not-
saying,
yeah.
but I think that edge of the building, I mean,
I've never felt like an applicant bait and switched us before.
That's not, definitely not, that's the garage.
go back to your north
No,
elevation.
but the point is visually it's different, and that's what Neil's saying, is before the grade came right up to the floor, the second floor.
Somewhere along that.
Well, according to your section. And now all of a sudden it's dropped 5 or 6 feet. So it's a 2.5-story building instead of a 1. I mean, it's the old adage, instead of raising the bridge, you lowered the water. I understand that. That's what you're doing. You know, but it's kind of,
For ventilation.
yeah. But we'll come back to that. These are only questions. Now we understand what you've done. The building on the back side is 2.5 floors, and it used to be 2.
Well, it
For
does
whatever
depend-
reason.
I'm sorry.
No.
It does depend on where you cut the section, because the site is sloping too. So where that, you know, where the section is shown in the middle of the building there.
This right here is what we approved. This is a 2-story building, period. That's what we approved, okay? Now, what we're seeing is this, but it's kind of covered up with the green fuzz here, but now instead of just seeing 2 floors, we're seeing 2.5. That's all we're talking about. We'll get back to that. There's only questions.
So if we go back to the west elevation of the original one,
Yeah.
that's what you're talking
No, I'm talking about the east elevation. The lower one there, which only shows 2 floors.
here, and then it starts to drop
Toward,
like this.
yeah, but that's toward Sunrise Valley. Our primary
That's
concern,
towards the shopping center. So this is showing at the top of the bridge, and then it swales down around to here. See,
if
where-
you recall some of the conversations we had,
Right, you can see it right here.
okay, our primary concern was the left side of the east elevation, because that's where your building got closest to the neighbors. So that's what we were concerned about. So when the neighbors were there, and you're looking out, you're only seeing a 2-story building on, say, the left 1/3 of the east elevation, okay? Now we're seeing 2.5 stories. That's the whole thing. Let's move on, okay? All right, if there are no other questions, or there's some folks out there that want to make comments, I'll read the list. You've heard enough. You're welcome to leave. But we're happy you're here. Linwood Payton? Not here? Okay. Louisa Tran? Joe Layton? Dawood Vazgu, close on that one. Ted and Starla Vittori. Jean and Angela Palazzo, Ola. Okay. Mr. Payton again. Rafael and Sanjul Sanchez. Oh. Ludi Robert. Oh. John Higgins. He's here. Comments? You're okay?
I have no concern. A nice design. You're not hearing from some of the folks on the list. This is shocking, but they moved. Those homes are now vacant. I'm the fourth one. I'm the dumb one. I'm still there. But the three to my left are vacant now. And people are concerned. Nonetheless, what you're doing is the right thing. You know, we appreciate it. I'm working with Kensington to deal with that landscaping issue. Is going to go a long way to keeping people happy. But this has been a community shock.
Yeah, I believe it. Thank you. Amit Patel. Luis Suji.
I don't have any major comments. I think, other than I think the design and the landscape is what restrictions we have. Just a quick comment on the section of the grade. I think my read on it was the original drawings had burned. Not there.
Yeah, that's what we were commenting about. Is there anyone else out there that is dying to speak? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Taya Kreinick. I'm at 2025 Approach Lane.
You get closer to the microphone over here. So.
Yes. I'm Taya Kreinick. I'm at 2025 Approach Lane, which is right on the other side of the road from this. So I have only 3 comments. One, when I see the windows that are facing my townhouse, I think from a resident's point of view inside, I think, wow, great, big windows. You can see out a lot. But from where my townhouse is, and it looking at mine, I think, wow, those are bigger windows than I thought. So just wanted to make that statement. In terms of the landscaping, I'm glad to see that the plan is coming together and that you're working with the cluster. I just want to make sure that there are enough trees that are going to have foliage on them year round, so we don't have to worry about in the wintertime all of the screening going away. And the third thing is I hear you mention clearing out the kind of debris and invasives on the shopping center side. On the other side of the building, there's a lot of English ivy, which I'm hoping will go away as well. We have a problem on both sides of the fence line, so I'm hoping that that will also be addressed as well.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Back up here for comments. Let's see. Eeny, meeny, miny, moe. Bruce, I haven't started with you yet.
Fine. I have always had problems with, and I didn't approve it the last time, so I'm not any happier today. Because I think it's 3 times bigger, and I know this isn't our issue tonight, than it and fits for that property. Falls within, it's a lot better. But starting with 90 and going to 65 is still a problem for me. I appreciate that the neighborhood is happier, but it's not just the neighbors that have to be, it has to fit within Reston. And I don't think we can cover up the 65,000 square foot building with enough landscaping to deal with the fact that it's still a 65,000 square foot building.
Okay. Charlie?
No, I have nothing else. I wasn't here for the original.
Okay.
I mean, I agree with Bruce. It's a lot of building, but I wasn't available to comment at that time. So.
Okay, we have to kind of keep in mind that in September 26th of 2017, we approved the site plan and general massing, the size of it, the number of units, the 65,000 square feet, and a 2 to 3 story building. So that's a done deal. That's good. Grace?
I appreciate the change in and the way the facade is, that sort of helps with the visual, the materials they've used to make it not as, to sort of like soften the appearance. I do have a question about the screening between the townhouses. Do you have anything proposed, like evergreen trees that are proposed instead of just along there? There was a mention by one of the neighbors.
I'm sorry, if I understand your correct.
Between, yeah, do you have any evergreens that are proposed in that area? She said she had some concern about all year round
There will be
coverage.
some evergreens proposed in that. Like again, the final mix hasn't been determined, but we will probably be using at least 50% of those will be evergreens to, again, provide that year-round screen.
Okay. And I was looking at the ground cover in the planting schedule, and I was thinking if you could consider changing the dwarf, a white dwarf periwinkle, to something else than just having the vinker.
Sure, absolutely. The plant list is very much in flux.
Thank you.
Nick?
Oh, yeah, I'm curious to see how the discussion's ongoing with the back of the building, of what can be done there. Regarding some of the features in the terrace area, for the feature wall, it might help to say you're going to eliminate the fireplace that's see-through on both sides, probably to avoid the townhome seeing that fire element. I know it's just a character image, but for comfortability, that not being an option would be helpful here.
Gotcha.
For the railing systems too, I think the use of a more opaque type of railing would be beneficial, and I do understand that it is lower on that side back there, but again, it's just a small screening thing that you can do that can help residents in townhomes, I think, where the landscaping can't get it to fill in there.
Can you clarify? I'm sorry, I want to make sure I understand
Sure.
where you want that.
On the way I understand it, the railing system kind of wraps around the back plaza there.
It does, yeah.
So instead of using a clear glass, find a maybe more opaque railing system that doesn't have as much opacity as the glass would.
Okay, I got you.
Is my preference there. And I'm curious, what are you doing anything with the English ivy between the properties? Are you leaving it? Are you?
It's a discussion that we've had, because if we take it all out on our side, they'll just grow back from the other side. So short of nuking the entire thing, it's very difficult. I mean, it's something that we will certainly work with everyone to come to an but it's one of the other things is, as you know, it sort of provides, as annoying as it can be, it does provide some amount of soil stability. And we're on a fairly steep slope coming down toward us, so in a way, the less disruption, the better. But we're happy to sort of work with everybody to try to come to a happy, medium somewhere.
That's all I got. Neil?
So, just to pick up where I left off, it is a big building, and the quality of the architecture and the perceived quality of the building in general was part of our approval, part of the reason I could move to approval. We went through a lot of studies with a lot of different looks, and so what I'm keying in here on is areas where I think it starts to look less substantive, and the right words at this hour sometimes disappear, where it doesn't look like it cheapened up, just to say it kind of bluntly. So when we're looking through these elevations, and I appreciate the number of views you've given us, because you've given us the chance to see where it's changed. You didn't come in here and try to totally pretend it was the same. I guess I'd like to pick on just a little bit the northeast corner elevation or perspective, which faces Sunrise Valley. There's a lot of brick there. This one? On the lower part of the building, yeah, the upper left corner there. That was an elevation we looked at a lot early on. I mean, everybody's going to see that all the time as millions of people zip back and forth along Sunrise Valley. I'd like to break up that brick area. Part of me wants you to go ahead and just use stone out there. To me, the brick is going to look somewhat cheaper. I think your color palette's decent, but I think the brick looks like probably the more workaday part of that palette, and that's a very prominent part of the building. So I would maybe switch to stone and or add some additional fenestration on that garage level. It's just a little harsh. Back to the garage, I think the transparency through the large openings, the sense of it being a garage versus sort of an artifice of making it kind of be perceived as a part of the building is getting lost with the very large openings. And the conceptual stuff that you guys did last year, there was a lot of sort of more artsy grillage suggested. I'm not supposing that it needs to go to that, but the vertical iron pickets by themselves just feel like fence. And I suppose I'm most concerned about that at the entrance elevation, more so than along the side where it's kind of looking into the back of the hillside a bit more. But a general comment would be like looking at the sheet 7, the upper left image there where there are the two large openings. The one under the gabled piece there, certainly there would prefer that it go to 2 openings that sort of, you know, you don't want the foundation of the building looking like the weakest part, carrying the column above there in the center, if you will. I would suggest you follow the cues of the fenestration above, and certainly in this example and in other similar examples, break up those large openings into a couple of, or even 3 if the fenestration suggests that, smaller openings. Sheet 8 doesn't bother me so much there, where it's underneath of the same massing as the second story or the first story, however you want to call the terrace level. But I think you should look at it. There was one other view. I guess I'm looking at the sheet all the way back up to sheet 4 at the sort of front of the building, and maybe you're standing over in the shopping center to see this, but along that same example, can you zoom in at all, Margo? Doesn't work that way, does it?
Yeah, you can.
The large opening immediately to the left of the porte cochere into the garage, when it has all that massing of the 3 separate windows on the upper two floors.
This one?
So to the left.
Just to the left of the porte cochere, right?
You got one massive opening here that it's just gonna like totally feel like, I don't know, like it belongs at the beach or something. Buildings up on stilts. Mask that in a little more. And I haven't compared back, but on the second floor, the windows don't have any cross, they're just straight casements. There's no mutton pattern or anything. Has it always been that plain? Feels like the second floor windows got a little, or third floor, I'm not sure how to describe it. Second floor windows, you have the crossbar. Third floor windows, you don't.
Right.
I mean, I just think it's going to start, you know, it's real easy to have this thing start looking like a good mid-quality motel. You know, just.
Well, if you see.
That's out west somewhere.
Yeah. We usually put the transoms on the, you know, the first floor, and then as you go up, the transoms disappear.
So if you studied and you think that's good, I'm okay with that too. I just don't want it to look like.
We don't need
Yeah, we do not either.
Like it got thin. And I'm scrolling because I'm curious what you presented previously.
Right.
And it looks like this previously, so that's good. You know, back to the grills, maybe they need to, maybe instead of adding additional masonry, you just need to break it up with the grillage itself. I guess you were doing more of that earlier. Again, I just don't want this thing to look thin at the ground floor, carrying this
residence above so that it all starts to look a little less quality than what we thought it was going to look. That's good.
Okay. I just had a couple of comments, go along with pretty much what everybody said, but where we were before, some of the reasons I approved it, or A, was the work you guys did to lower it from 4 floors to 2.5 or whatever it is. And secondly, the color palette you had, to me, made it a more comfortable building, and the darker colors helped to reduce the visual mass in my mind. So I think the new color palette I'm not in favor of. The kind of yellowish siding, whatever, to me it visually makes the building look a lot larger. Because if I, like these two drawings, the one on top is what we had last year, the one on the bottom is what you just gave us. This to me looks, because of the lighter colors, looks way bigger. So I couldn't vote in favor of the new color palette, because I think the old color palette was one of the main reasons. I think it made the building look smaller, and it visually reduced the mass. That comment. The second comment is, I really think you need to bury the garage on the back like you had previously. And if it tapers off and slopes toward Sunrise, okay, that somewhere in there you'll have some openings, but I think dropping that whole thing across the back a half-story, what I approved a year ago was a 2-story building, period, with the grade coming up to that 2nd floor level. So I can't approve this the way it's shown with 2.5 floors on the back. I've heard everything you said of why, but I'm just telling you how I feel about it. I don't think that's the vocabulary of the building has changed too much for me to approve it again, and the garage has all of a sudden jumped up out of the ground, or like I said, you lowered the water instead of raising the bridge. So those are my only comments. So, you guys have any responses to any of the stuff you've just heard? Or?
And Neil made a good point. We showed a lot of different perspectives, a lot of different views, showing that the intent wasn't what kind of how it's being perceived. It literally is for ventilation purposes.
You got openings on the front. Doesn't that give you enough ventilation? Or you have openings on the front. I mean,
it does not.
I bet mechanical ventilation, like the last people we had in here, said that's what they're doing. So there is an option.
I think part of it, if we go into detail on the site plan for the last part, that corner as it sloped down or something like that, was a big, it was a big, massive wall. You still saw it because it still came down 10 or 12 feet from the ridge.
On the right of the bottom photo.
In the other, for the seating, why I don't like elevations, straight on elevation. This is the top of the ridge. It always went down over the side, that's what I'm saying. It always dropped down from the.
But the cross-section showed us that the grade actually hit the building at the 2nd floor level.
That cross-section was over on this side.
Right, it was at the middle of the building.
It was over further.
It was basically at the patio.
Anyway,
It
my
showed
point.
where it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, we know where it was, and that's.
Yeah.
And
I
my only
understand what you're
comments.
saying.
I don't like the current vocabulary, and I think the garage needs to be buried. You guys, that's just me. Okay.
In terms of the color palette, we looked at that. We do believe there's a lot of tree cover, and we do believe it'll generally be dark, in general, inside and out. And we propose to lighten it up for that reason. There is a lot of tree cover on an elevated hill on the east side of the building, okay, which is why we chose.
Okay. I still don't like it. I appreciate what you're doing. That's, okay. That's just my opinion. I think it makes it way more visible and makes it look bigger to me. But anyway. Okay, here we are. Do we have a motion from anybody here? Are we at that point? We want to talk for another half an hour.
I'd like to make a motion that we defer approval of the elevations and ask the applicant restudy the color palette, restudy the north elevation, restudy the large garage openings, potentially eliminating them entirely along the east side of the building. Other issues? Or a second, maybe? Get a second first.
I'll second that.
Any other issues?
Motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Can we add to the motion the approval of the landscape
Yes.
plan with Grace's comment to remove the vinca or replace the vinca with another planting.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't have a problem with landscape.
No problem.
Okay. Anything else?
So
Replace the
approval of
ground cover,
landscape
right?
and deferral on the elevations.
I just make an observation that I've seen this board having conceptually approved a building, a project, change their mind. So I just want to, I'm not asking that, that's not part of this motion, but I just want to make it clear that that can't happen.
Any further discussion? Everybody understand the motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye or raise your hands, whatever.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Thank you, guys. See you next month.
That'd be the 17th, right? But we just heard that an hour ago.
Okay, the last thing on the agenda
So Neil,
won't take more than 45 minutes to
that's
discuss.
the elevation below, right?
I'm sorry?
Neil's flashed that picture.
Yeah, and
On the left
it was a
side.
little weak then, but it got worse. That's old.
Yes, this is
Again,
the one that
it's
was.
right up there, so close to the street, and it's kind of like, we said this to the previous Mosley guy. It's like a microcosm of the whole building. If you get that little piece perfectly proportioned, I think the whole building, people will perceive the whole building. And if you don't get that piece right, that's how everybody's going to think of the building, because it's that visible. Okay.
Understood, yeah. Yeah, just the storage and
It's got the wrong stuff
mechanical,
there.
electric and all that, all.
Put some fake windows in, do something.
Well, understood.
Thank you all. And last but not least,
What is this?
Anna is going to have a reading of Resolution 7, Resolution 8, and the corrections to
In the
resolution.
interest of time, this will be 2 seconds or less.
Short version of it is we met with the RABOC, and we're going to be taking the guidelines, the resolutions and everything to the meeting next week.
Correct, just to get a report out.
And then once they say, okay, this is all stuff we've been working on for the last 2 years, right?
Well,
After,
so the guidelines will be set for a hearing next month's meeting.
Here,
The hearing,
right,
which is usually,
but we have to do, after we go to the RA board, we then hold our own public hearing the next month. Then whatever happens there, it goes back to the RA board again. So we're in the process, okay?
but
Want
we should
anything to
get full
add?
approval on everything right now.
Yeah,
so.
I think, yeah. They seem to be
Conceptual
happy. I mean,
approval. No pun intended.
our liaison was there and she didn't object too much.
No, I asked how we could accelerate it.
Yeah, right.
We'll
they're gonna-
accelerate if we can.
Yeah, we're hoping we get the super meeting in August, then we're done. Whew. So anyway, that was that. Other than that, Anna, anything to add or? No? I need a motion to adjourn.
To adjourn?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all very much. It was not an easy meeting.
Aye.